Good afternoon, everyone. Grateful to see each and every one of you here on today. And as our custom is, we like to provide safety and security protocols before all of our meetings, particularly with so many guests here today. So Ms. LaShawn Statham is going to come. LaShawn,
Yes,
all right. Will you provide our safety and security protocols?
it is my pleasure. Good afternoon, President Mills, Mayor Dyer, Commissioners, and Clint. Here to provide our safety moment for the day. We are located at 100 West Anderson Street in the Commission Chambers on the 7th floor. We have emergency exits just behind the commissioners here through that doorway, in the middle of the room and to the rear of the room. There are 3 doorways that we may exit from. Our gathering point, should we have to evacuate the room, is down, exit through the nearest door near you, proceed to the stairwells at either end of the hallway, make our way down to the first floor. You'll go through the lobby, and our gathering point will be underneath the 408 at the surface parking lot. We have AED and first aid kits located in the closet just behind me. Should we need to call 911, Janice Osani will call 911. I will be the medical emergency respondent on scene. And our security team will assist with directing our emergency responders into the building and up to the 7th floor. That concludes the safety moment for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It is now 2:01, and I'd like to officially call the OUC Pricing Roadmap Public Workshop to order. I'd like to acknowledge we have a full board of commissioners here today, so we do have a quorum to conduct the business of the meeting. And I want to thank you, all of you from the public and others who are here to express interest and desire in learning more about our pricing roadmap and where we're headed. So we welcome all members of the public. We want to give you the opportunity to provide your comments to the commissioners on the pricing process. Now, please bear in mind, there is no official action that will be taken during today's workshop. We want to hear from you, digest your comments, your feedback, make intelligent decisions based on what we hear. So this is not a meeting where the board where I will call for a vote or some motion. It is a public workshop to hear from the public, and the public to hear from OUC on where we're headed, to provide insight and understanding, and to make sure we clarify anything that comes up. Now, having said all of that, we anticipate a long meeting, and we're going to ask for your help to make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. So if you speak, we're going to give you the allotted 3-minute time frame. And once we bang the gavel, we're going to ask you, please be respectful. I know you could go on and on, but right now I've already received 45 email comments of people who may want to speak. And I already have a list of 10 who want to address this, and I'm sure there'll be more. So seeing that I have a wife and kids to go home to, please let me get out of here. I say that in jest, but seriously, we want you to respect all and to acknowledge that we will be moving the meeting in a very timely format. So if you're a member of a group, or if I find similarity in message, reiterations of specific points that we've already heard, you may hear me say, let's move past that, or identify one spokesperson for the group to provide input. That will all help us to ensure that everyone gets a chance to speak. So having said all of that, set the stage for the meeting and preparing to move on at this point, we're going to turn it over to our President and CEO, Clint Bullock. We'll turn it over to you at this time for the presentation.
Well, I want to start by saying thank you, President Mills, Commissioners, Mayor. Thank you, of course, for your time for this workshop here today. I also want to thank our customers and community for taking time out of your schedule and being here today. We certainly recognize that you have some thoughts and some feedback, and as the President said, We certainly will have time for that, but I want to acknowledge you right now and appreciate your time coming out here today. On behalf of the entire leadership, management, staff, I just want to say I am very excited about this workshop and really to discuss the future of OUC and more importantly, to share this multi-year plan that we're going to be talking about here today. Certainly to provide a little bit of perspective, there's no doubt the energy industry is going through significant transition, transformation. Some commissioners may say disruption in the entire business model and services that we provide. Utilities are being introduced to new types of production services to make electricity. Customers are providing alternatives in which to self-generate or have services on their side of the meter. Electrification, AI, and the digitals, demand is going up and the need for our product continues to increase throughout the industry. But as we think about the energy transition, certainly one element of that is pricing structure. And really it became clear to me a few years ago that we needed to make a change. And not just a change in perhaps one rate structure, it really became an opportunity to address several elements related to our pricing structure. And it was at that very time where I asked Mindy Bernay, our CFO, to really lead a team to develop this plan, be intentional about a multi-year plan, be intentional about how we communicate to our customers. And that team didn't just involve our rates and pricing group, that involves our customer service, our IT, our billing department, our communications department, because together we are all going to get a little more educated about where we need to go. Now, I also want to say I've been with OUC for 35 years. I've had the opportunity to lead our rates and pricing group. And so I certainly have an understanding of that area. And really feel like today we're going to just dedicate to the pricing workshop and really give the commissioners an update of where we're headed related to this multi-year approach. The elements of this multi-year approach and giving people time was really important. First changes aren't even going to be till 2025, and we're certainly going to talk more about that. No doubt our industry has an opportunity to do better on how we educate our customers about the grid, how the grid works, and cost recovery. There is no doubt that the industry as a whole will own that. We talked about if you have an outage, call this number. If you want to set up a new account, call this number. But the industry has not done a very good job of educating customers about fixed costs and variable costs and energy and demand and the elements that go into providing the services that we offer. The bottom line is it's complex. And generally most customers don't really need to know that or understand it. Just who do I call if there's an outage? Who do I call to set up services? And so I think as we talk about the energy of the future and we talk about these changes, the pricing structure is an absolute important element to it. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. So I really hit on some of these elements, but today the pricing workshop, it's a framework. And as I indicated, it's a multi-year framework in which we recognize that we can do a better job of addressing customer equity, understanding that maybe the one size fits all doesn't work so well anymore as we talk about technology changes, customers' options, and as we really think about cost recovery for the services that we're offering in an equitable format to make sure everyone's paying for their fair share. As was said by the president, I'll go ahead and say it again, no action, of course, will be taken today. Depending on the outcome of the workshop and the July meeting, perhaps there'll be approval in the August timeframe, but time will tell. Pricing recommendations are brought to this board for approval. That's one of the policy elements this board has related to approving our rates. And we do that annually. And sometimes we do that multiple times a year, depending on fuel rate reductions, which we recently announced a fuel rate reduction. We're certainly pleased to do that. The program, as we've identified it, is our OUC Peak Shift program. And again, I think I've already hit on the elements of it being a multi-year program, really empowering our customers with more options. And we'll explain what those options are, and ideally options that allow them to save money. This is not about trying to tell people not to have your AC on when it's hot outside or run your heat when it's cold. Consumers may decide not to change, but there are elements of this program that provide price signals for those that maybe want to, maybe looking for and focused on the affordability of that bill and may be willing to make a few adjustments. We're going to talk about that even further. Next slide, please. OUC continues our path to clean energy. And commissioners, you're certainly aware, back in 2019 and ultimately in 2020, OUC approved our 2025 OUC Connected Strategic Plan. And that was a really important part of what we did in 2019, 2020. And certainly one of the elements was our vision statement. OUC will be an innovative solutions leader and partner of choice. And I will tell you, commissioners, we work hard at that every single day. Another element that was really pivotal in that plan was committing to net zero CO2 emissions by the year 2050. And commissioners, as you know, we didn't just stop there at the goal of 2050. We said, no, we're going to have interim goals. We're going to have interim goals in the year 2030 to reduce CO2 emissions by 50%. We're going to have interim goals in the year 2040 to reduce by 75%. We are working every day to achieve those. And I will tell you, we are on track to achieving our goal of reducing CO2 emissions by the year 2030 by 50%. Later on in 2020, in that year, commissioners, as you know, the board approved the Integrated Resource Plan. It was an intentional long-term study to understand our generation mix, fuel sources, and how we were ultimately going to meet this goal. And as a part of that electric integrated resource plan, we were intentional to talk with customers. And one of the things that was really important is to customers give us feedback on how you rank these 4 critical attributes that I would say are critical to how we manage our business. How do you rank reliability, affordability, sustainability, resiliency? They are all extremely important, but I will remind you that they are in the order of how our customers ranked, and reliability was ranked number 1, followed by affordability, sustainability, and resiliency. And the question that we all talk about is, how do we maintain that balance? And I think that is the most important now. It is a balance. It can't be one or the other. It has to be a continuous balance. There's no silver bullet. There's no one answer. There's no one solution to how we're going to achieve this. And I want to be really clear that OUC is absolutely committed to solar. And we're going to show you some data from a standpoint of how we compare in the state of Florida. And then by the end of this year, we will have 2 more 74.5 large-scale community solar farms are coming online by the end of this year. By early fall, we will have a 2 megawatt floating solar array, OUC's 3rd floating solar array, which, by the way, will likely be the largest in the state, largest in the Southeast, and certainly in the top 3 or 5 in the country. So we continue to be committed. That is how we are going to achieve some of these goals. And it's important that we develop a path to affordability and clean energy when discussing this overall transition. Next slide, please. So the workshop agenda here today, you're going to hear less from me, and you're going to hear more from Mindy Brunet, our Chief Financial Officer ex officio, and as you know, soon to be retiring. But her partner in this, also Linda Ferroni, our Chief Customer and Marketing Officer. Together, those 2 will tag team and really walk you through an intentional presentation with data, with rate comparisons, with also a bit of a background on where we are headed with all these initiatives. I would encourage the commissioners to ask us any questions that you have throughout. If you have a question on a slide, let us know. We want to have a good dialogue during this conversation, but I assure you that both Linda and Mindy will pause after every section and see if the commissioners have any additional questions. We want to make sure we have a good dialogue. As far as the agenda here, we're going to give a bit of overview of the energy industry and how it's structured, and how we deliver power. We're going to talk about some pricing fundamentals in our first section. Then we're going to move into some of the drivers and some of the enablers that we feel like are moving us in this direction with these pricing structure changes. And then third, we will get specifically into what is the peak shift recommendations. And we're going to walk through each and every one of those in detail to give you an idea, what are they, how we're proposing it, when we're proposing it, and ultimately show you some rate comparisons. Then we'll move into communication and stakeholder commissioners. The teams have been working and meeting with some folks early on before the workshop, but most importantly, talking about some of the communications and stakeholder engagement that we will have after today as a part of this workshop, and how we will continue the education and help people understand how they're using power today, and more importantly, how they can optimize or utilize these programs going forward, which again is why it's so important that the first changes are not even until 2025. And then we'll move into some closing and next steps. As the president said, at that point, then we'll have an opportunity to hear from the community. For those after they have a chance to hear some of the things we have said, we will take a moment to listen and hear what those from the community said, and then we'll move forward with commissioner comments. So with that, I'm going to step aside. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mindy and Linda to lead us in the next discussions here on this PowerPoint.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Clint.
Cindy, may I suggest, just for the benefit of so many guests, as you prepare to present, please state your name and your official title.
Sure. My name is Mindy Brunei, and my title is Chief Financial Officer ex officio. As Clint mentioned, I am getting ready to retire. So I have my successor here, so we've transitioned titles.
Thank you.
And like Clint, I've been here a long time, 26 years. Maybe not as long as him. So with that, I'll move forward on my first slide. Clint touched upon this briefly. We haven't, as an industry, done a really good job to help people understand that when they flip the switch, there is a lot happening behind the scenes. But like many complex industries, it's hard to really explain all of the nuances. So we'll try to share just at a high level some of the process that goes into flipping that switch and having the energy there on demand whenever the customer wants. It starts, just switch this, it starts with a fuel source into our generation system, and that has different types of generation. What we have here shows fossil fuel generation, nuclear generation, and solar generation. Different fuels into different generation sources. From there, the energy that is produced is transmitted through high voltage transmission system, carrying long distances. That energy does travel quite a bit. I kind of think of it as the highway of our electrons, but that's my kind of simplistic view of it. That high voltage energy is then stepped down in through a substation into the distribution lines, where it is then transmitted locally into neighborhoods and homes. And then as it gets closer to the home, it then gets stepped down again through transformers, whether it's overhead, which you see on the top there, or underground, which is the second example you see right under that. And from that, the energy is measured at the customer's meter into either the customer's home or office, where today we use digital meters to really measure that. Years ago, we had more simplistic meters for customer, residential and small commercial, but our larger commercial customers had more sophisticated meters for probably the last 2 or 3 decades at least, because it was cost beneficial. But that really is at a very, very high level how we deliver the power that people count on every day to support their lives. It is an essential service, and we certainly take that to heart. And so we all work really hard in all of our respective areas to ensure that we meet each of those components that Clint shared: reliability, affordability, resiliency, and sustainability. So moving forward, really this is about pricing. So we wanted to really translate that basic concept of how we deliver energy into how we price our product. And you see here, we've highlighted colors. You will see this consistently through the presentation. Fuel is colored as gold color, and it starts as the source into the production process. And then the red and green bars that travel across really the infrastructure represent demand and non-fuel energy. And let me take a moment to explain the difference between the two. The demand really represents the infrastructure costs, the capital costs that are really fixed in nature. So you would think of those as the power plant, as the wires, as I call them the marching soldiers that you see up and down the highways, and then the distribution lines. The non-fuel energy is the more variable component of that infrastructure. How do we maintain it? How do we ensure that it has the care and due diligence to really operate as intended? And then on the far right, you see the customer charge, and that is comprehensive from the meter through the customer service system, the billing system, the collection, and any questions that customers may have through that whole process. We informally call it meter to cash, but it does cover all of those costs. And those are the four components that make up our billing system, whether it is a mid to large commercial customer, or in the case of the residential, it is all of those components minus the demand charge. And I'll walk through that. So before I walk through those components, I think it's important to share some of our obligations as a utility, as a provider of essential services. These are the commitments that we have not just to the customer to meet the peak demand, but also to our part as an integral part of the grid. We are leaned on and we lean to our partners around us. And so you see here, the chart shows a reserve margin. That is our requirement to be part of the larger system. Because one day or any hour, we could have something or our partner could have something. And to ensure we have that reserve as the state as a whole, as the nation as a whole, we all have to have that reserve margin. But underneath that, you can really see, and you will continue to see this through the presentation, our general system-wide load curve. Load curve for us is different than it is for someone in North Dakota, for someone in Maine. It is different, it is geographic to us, but this is our overall system load curve. And you can see that overall we do peak around the late afternoon, especially our season is in the summer when we peak. There are smaller peaks in the winter, but overall the system peak is in the summer. And intuitively that makes sense because we live in Florida and it's hot. And starting in April and May, it starts to get hot. By the time we reach August, it really gets hot. So that's our commitment to the customer to be able to serve at that peak. It is also our commitment to Public Service Commission, the Federal Energy Regulatory System, the grid, national. I'm not going to go through the acronyms, but it is our commitment to have that reserve margin and be there as an integral part of an essential service that OUC and other utilities provide.
Our connection with the city, being a municipality, as well as our grid drives the reserve. Our competitors, are they obligated to having similar?
Absolutely. We,
Okay.
like FP&L, Duke,
Et cetera,
everyone
has to have that.
has a reserve margin. The state of Florida requires that to be 15%.
Got it. That's what I wanted, 15%.
15% is the state's requirement. Other states, I'm not sure if they're different in other states. Okay. So we have a 15%, but the investor owns have a 20% reserve margin.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I point something else out on this page? Sorry.
Yes.
Linda Ferroni, Chief Customer Marketing Officer. I do want to point out that in addition, the slide shows where the area of opportunity is. So we serve to that peak demand, but that leaves us with underutilized assets. So by the ability to reduce that peak demand also reduces our underutilized assets in those non-peak
Good
times.
point.
So you'll kind of hear that theme throughout.
Thank you.
Absolutely. How we levelize that peak, we call it, informally call it shave the peak, really helps us maximize our resources. So thank you, Linda. So getting into more of the nitty gritty of how we measure our services, we measure it both in kilowatt hours, which everyone I believe is pretty familiar with. That is how most of us receive our bills. How many kilowatt hours have you used this month? But what the residential and small commercial customer does not see is on their bill is the kilowatt. That is the demand with which they place on the system. Now, the mid and large commercial customers do have that charge on their bill. That is the demand charge because they have a very unique load pattern to each of their different businesses. So when that billing design was created, the meters, which were very costly at the time, were really installed for those mid to large commercial customers because it balanced that cost-benefit relationship. Where on the residential side, the costs were prohibitive. But we'll talk more about that as I get into that. But the kilowatt hours are the rate for which the power of an electrical device is used. I think the chart on the right really tries to explain that, the visual on the right, which shows that one light bulb can run for 10 hours, whereas 10 light bulbs can only run for an hour to get that same 1 kilowatt. Not the kilowatt hours, but the kilowatt. Okay. I know it's a new concept for the residential and small commercial customers, but it is something our large commercial customers are very familiar with. You'll hear more about that when you hear us talk about our electrical panel in our home, because that really is an indication of the rate and the demand that you can put on the system because you're constrained in your home by your electrical panels. And you know that you've gone beyond that when you've blown a breaker. So it's kind of a way to remind people how demand is connected, how the kilowatt hour is connected to their home. But again, you'll hear more about that as we move forward. So as I shared, the mid to large commercial customers have 4 billing components. They have a fuel component, all customers have that. They have a customer charge, which for them is very small because you can see that their demand component is a much larger piece. And what you have on the chart on the right really shows our costs when we break out our cost to serve. And on the right side of the bar chart represents how we bill our customers. And again, these are our mid and large commercial customers. We fully recover the cost for fuel. It is a pass-through charge, and you'll see the same thing on the residential side. But really, as we look at the residential and small commercial, you'll see that differential where we're really focusing our pricing program on, because we do have a good balance between the non-fuel energy and the demand, because we also want to make sure that our pricing has some variable components so that we can encourage our traditional form of conservation, because a kilowatt hour saved helps our conservation. We're just looking to dial into that second component of conservation, the rate which is used in the system. So, but the commercial customers have a design that works really well and really is tailored to their use. So whether I am a large production, a large industry that may have something very unique, the way I operate versus a theme park, which may be very different, the metering and the billing allows for that differential to be distinguished through our billing process. Now, when I move forward to the residential customers, you can see that there is no demand component here. So I have, our pricing structure today has no way of distinguishing the rate in which a residential or small commercial uses our energy. All we can measure is the kilowatt hour. So I just want to go back to make sure that I am clear that our core pricing principles, like for the commercial customers, are really designed around cost recovery, ensuring that we keep our bill stable, our pricing stable for our customers. We know that we are providing an essential service, and we want to make sure that we're equitable within the customer segment. So we split our costs between the commercial segment and the residential and small commercial. And then within those segments, we price our product. This model truly has worked for, I'm going to go with well over 100 years. This is the industry standard model. It's been the industry standard model because residential and small commercial have the same type of load pattern. They use energy in the same modeling pattern. They may use a different amount of kilowatt hours, but their pattern is relatively the same. And at the same time, the cost to put the meter in was cost prohibitive. Today, that's not the case, but this model is over 100 years old and really reflects the fact that things were different a long time ago. Our pricing, as Clint mentioned, is reviewed by the board. We look at it annually. It is cost recovery based. We make sure that we are equitable in how we deliver that. And the Florida Public Service Commission also looks at our cost recovery as well.
Okay, please make sure that all hear and know that the Florida Public Service Commission also has to sign off and review our pricing structures.
Absolutely, and we file that with them. Again, to make sure that we are equitable and we are not cross-subsidizing between the customer segments. So that is a very important component for the Public Service Commission, that we do not, they call it cross-subsidization, to make sure that one segment is not paying for costs on behalf of another segment. And then we bring forward to the board our costs to get approved, again, and our pricing to make sure that we are adhering to our principles.
And fellow board members, without it being said, the recurrent theme is in the area of non-fuel energy. That's the area of focus that's prime.
Absolutely. Thank you, President Mills. That really is the piece that we'll be focusing on today, because that is the difference between the residential and small commercial customer pricing and the mid and large, where we really don't have the same level of changes. Again, the meter can deliver different information today than it could years ago, and our customers are using our product differently. It is not the same load curve across all of our customers anymore. They are using it differently. So we must reflect that in how we price our product. It makes sense to say that, again, we're trying to recover our costs in a way that allows equity and ensures that we're reflecting how customers use our product. And really what we're trying to do, again, the 1 kilowatt hour has been the one-dimensional way that we've delivered on conservation. Really, this design is to send a second conservation signal to say, it's not just how many kilowatts you use, but as Linda mentioned, how we levelize out the peak, how we maximize the rate and the manner in which we can defer and really extend the life of our long-term infrastructure assets so we can keep our prices affordable well into the future. Because we know those large infrastructure costs are very expensive. Yes. So before we move to the next section, I know this is pretty foundational for the board members, but do you have any questions? Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Linda, and then we'll start tag teaming a little bit.
Mindy, can you hear me okay? Okay, so the next concept, next slide, also a bit foundational, but Mindy alluded to this. On the left side of the screen, what you really see there is the way the electric system has worked since its inception. There's been centralized, large power plants that really feed this large highway, like that analogy, the highway, the transmission system that leads it to distribution into our neighborhoods. And it's a one-way system. That's the way it has been. And our customers have really been passive. They've been receiving, they've been paying bills. We have really started evolving, and I think it happened slowly, but the pace is rapidly growing to where production is no longer centralized. We have multiple sources of generation today. The market is driving that decentralization of production. There's energy storage ever growing. Look forward to the day that we have lots of it here, but there's ever growing energy storage throughout that grid, which creates a really different dynamic for our operations team. There are customers that are prosumers. They're producing electricity and they're consuming electricity, creating this two-way grid, which is far more complicated for us to manage because we still want to keep reliability, affordability, and sustainability, which is our North Star. So all of those things really create this challenge for us to make sure that we're really getting our pricing signals right so that it is equitable and we're still giving the price signals to really conserve in the two ways like Mindy was describing, both from an all over usage and reducing that peak demand. So I'm going to talk through on the next page, I'm going to talk through really these four main drivers that are influencing why we want to make pricing structural changes now. So the first one, and we've got a few pages on each of these, so I'll just hit it quickly though. So we're going to talk about this growing demand. We've talked with you about this before in commission meetings actually, but it is rising sharply and we'll talk more about that. There's a variety of challenges that are in front of us right now. Supply chain, cyber, environmental, those are just a few things that continue to make costs difficult for us to manage. So that is also creating a challenge. Our CO2 emissions North Star goals, very important, also very challenging because our renewable resource here in Florida is solar, which is intermittent. So we've got to figure out how to address that. And as we've both talked about so far, customer usage patterns really are changing, and we'll talk a bit more about that. These are the four main points that we'll hit on the next few slides.
So as CFO, I'll talk about the increase that really is driving this demand. As Linda mentioned, the building of energy resources really is changing, and we need to plan. These are not assets that come up overnight. These need long-term planning, and to see this growth coming forward, really need to be thoughtful about planning for these assets. And as we see the growing demand, really looking at ways we can curb and really levelize that usage so we can delay that additional infrastructure that's needed. This is industry nationwide data. This is not necessarily OUC data, but OUC service territory does reflect a component of this. We may not have a data center coming here today, but we could very well have a data center coming here in the future. We need to be prepared for that AI technology, the enhanced use, the growth in demand. And again, that takes some time, but these are experts in the industry that are projecting out to the future. We've been through a period where energy demand has been relatively flat, really been conserving and really seeing that steady growth, very steady usage And now we're seeing this really come close to doubling what our demand is. And this is not anything that those of us who listen to the news don't hear on a daily basis, that the demand for our product is increasing substantially. And so since it takes a long time to really build these assets and be able to meet those four attributes, particularly reliability and resiliency, we want to make sure we do those in a thoughtful manner so that we can remain affordable. Oops. But on this slide, we also want to share with you that it's not just the demand that's putting pressure on us. There is inflationary impacts that are really driving changes as well. We've been through a period of high inflation. Those have been really impactful to our industry. You can see some of the changes here from both our natural gas, which has come up and now has come back down, but we've seen pressures on solar. We're seeing rising interest rates. We're seeing some constraints on our transformers. What's happening nationally is trickling into our economy, is trickling into our operations, some directly, some indirectly. We are impacted by national things like import tariffs that are changing how we can respond. And again, today we don't have a data center, but those things are changing. Our customers are asking more from us. There's electrification that's requiring more of a demand, and putting in this infrastructure in the midst of a period of inflation and high demand, where it's not just the energy industry that's asking for these pieces of equipment, it's also the big data companies, right? It's not unusual for a Microsoft or a Meta to be saying, we can build our own. And so, yes, they're willing to build their own, which is great, but they're putting pressure on prices and they're putting pressure on our supply chain. So as a consequence, we see what normally has been relatively stable pricing spiking up, and the duration to get our products is increasing substantially. So those are all.
21, 22, and 23 on gas. Can you expand on what happened in 21 and 22?
Sure. In 21 and 22, we really saw our gas prices spike up. And that was a combination of constraints. We also had some fossil fuel challenges in delivery. Really, for us, we had some challenges, but nationwide, there were constraints. And now what we've seen is those prices have come down. They're commodity prices. They spike up from demand and constraints, and they come down based on market constraints. We are also exploring more and delivering more on the gas side, but we've had some constraints at the dispatch side. We've had some constraints on how we get our gas as well as the sources of our gas. But again, those are commodity prices, so they spiked up for a short period of time. Fuel, natural gas, coal, though all of those experienced those constraints post-COVID. And then we saw them come down, and we are now settling back into where we were before. Hence the reason why we've just brought forward that fuel price decrease. Really, it is, for us, fuel is a pass-through charge. So when we see the spike, we unfortunately have to pass that on. But as soon as we start to see that decrease, we are able to pass that savings back to our customers. I know I've even heard on radio that it's, we're one of the few industries that actually may decrease our prices. And we really stand by that because that component really is driven outside of our control.
Thank you for sharing that. The chart begs for you to address that issue. Okay, and so thank you for showing that we gave the price increase, but then decrease because fuel is a pass-through charge.
Absolutely.
So Mindy showed on a prior graph our typical load curve, our typical summer load curve. So, solar is incredibly important to us as we're working towards our path to clean energy, but it's not without its challenges. So we wanted to show here this difference between our typical load curve And this is a summer load curve, and it is peaking there about the 6 p.m. hour. And we wanted to show what solar does at the same time. And this is basically to scale. So you can see in the gold color there, that is solar at a full capacity, nice, clear, sunny day. The green is solar performance on a day with clouds or thunderstorms. So you can see it drop off in the afternoon as the clouds roll in, which they like to do here in Florida, the partly cloudy state. So we just wanted to make that point. We're big fans of solar. We need as much solar as we can get, but it's not going to be without, but solving for our CO2 emissions reduction goals is not going to be without its challenges. There'll be a lot more work for us to do to make sure that's a reliable, affordable source of power for us. On the next page, this is now a more granular look. This is not smooth as the last page was. This shows over 15-minute intervals, kind of the sawtooth you get. So what you see here is 3 days in a row, the same solar array. It's a 74.5 megawatt solar array. So you can see it goes up and hits that peak sometime around the 10 a.m. hour. Looks like it could actually go a little higher. That's where we'd love to have some battery storage so we don't have to clip that. And then it comes, if it's at full capacity on the summer day, it's coming back down, around sunset. But you can just see as the weather patterns affect it, what that does to our grid. And of course, on the dashed line, which looks like it was on April 3rd, some weather rolled in and really took solar production down that day. So again, it just points to this fact that we really need, we're learning with the solar that we have on our grid now, how to best manage that with the gas peakers that we use to augment it, so we don't lose reliability, and how we're really going to need energy storage in the future at some point to smooth this so that we really can have that reliable solar, or that reliable production every day. Now, if you think about if you had multiple days in a row that looked like that dashed line and you were not getting a lot of solar out of that, even if you were charging batteries every day, you'd start running into problems. So again, it just points to the fact that we still have a lot of work to do to figure out how to meet those CO2 emissions goals, which we're up for the challenge, but it's not without challenge.
Coal is the most affordable and the most reliable.
Well, maybe nuclear would be
Well,
first.
I mean,
Yeah.
from what we have at our disposal.
Correct. We do have a small amount of nuclear, but yes, within our operations, coal is the least expensive, most reliable. But it has a problem with the third box. That is correct. That would be the big challenge with coal, for sure. Thank you for pointing that out.
Gas is also a close second. Our natural gas generation facilities are a close second. And depending on the volatility of the commodity price, could sometimes be a little more affordable than coal. You're welcome. Equally reliable because they're base load plants.
And more flexible, because some of it can peak up and down quickly.
And candidly, more mature technology, right? I mean, that's what we have with more mature technology, just a little more stability.
So on this page, we've talked about this, but we wanted to really demonstrate what we mean by it. We talked about how residential customers are really differing in their usage of electricity. So you see here 3 different types of homes. We've got a multifamily dwelling there, a single family home, and then a larger single family home. So in the multifamily home, what you see is in the circles, we're really depicting different examples of appliances you may see in that home. And what you see is a relatively small air conditioner, maybe a smaller size appliances like refrigerator, washer, dryer, even oven, stove, perhaps. In a single family home, you're getting to a larger air conditioner, maybe some other types of pumps and larger family-sized appliances. And by the time you get to a large single-family home, you may have multiple air conditioners, you may be charging a car, you may have a pool pump. there's a variety of other things that may come into play. So we've tried to show here, again, back to this concept of total consumption over a month versus that one instant in time peak demand. So the numbers right underneath that depict those. So for a multifamily home, you see a 700 kilowatt hour consumption there from a monthly standpoint, moving up to our average of 1,150 to 1,700. So that's that monthly average consumption of those types of homes. And the peaks, you can see there too, what we typically see, 10 kilowatts, 13 kilowatts, 19 kilowatts. That's kind of the typical you might see. And builders know this. So when they build homes, they design things into homes with the assumption that this is the way they're going to be used. So the electrical panel, for example, wouldn't actually allow a multifamily or a single family to hit that peak demand that you might see in a large home. And even somebody that owns that middle home that decides, oh, we've had 3 kids, we need to renovate and add a bedroom and another bathroom and a second TV room. They want to add, they want to renovate. They often have to upgrade that electric panel for that very purpose, because they may need to add a second air conditioner. Maybe they built a pool in to accommodate their family and they're lucky enough to do so. So it's just to make that point that this is the divergence that we're talking about. Single family homes and how they use electricity does not look the same anymore. And some, if they add an EV, say they add a battery, maybe they have solar, they're using our products really differently and they're using the grid really differently. So that's just something we're really looking at today to make sure that we're not causing energy burden and disparities in energy burden.
You're going to address the takeaway bullet, right?
Sorry, say that again. You go back.
Oh, well, let me go
You're
back.
going to address the takeaway bullet there. Today's pricing structures are not capturing costs.
We are.
Okay.
Yes, we are. We're kind of setting the stage for it now. Thank you.
Thank you.
So here is the slide. While Linda highlighted the diverging residential customer base, nowhere is this clearer than with the rooftop solar customers. This is where our customers are really using our product very differently. They are using a much smaller amount of kilowatt hours, which we encourage. We support solar, but they're still using our grid. And the way our pricing design is set, we are not recovering our costs. And you've heard us say several times, we are cost recovery based. And so if we're not recovering our costs through the kilowatt hour from all of our customers, somebody else is picking up that additional shortfall. And that's where the inequity really comes in, because the pricing design is not flexible enough to recover the cost of using the grid or the demand on the system. That's the dynamic we see here. So when we look at the cost to serve, the chart on the right really shows you the customer charge, the demand, and the non-fuel energy for the residential customer as a whole. When you look at the average residential customer bill, and of course we've excluded fuel here because fuel is a pass-through. And if you have rooftop solar, then you're providing your own fuel. The fuel is the sun and it's coming through your solar panels. So we excluded that here. But when you look at the average residential customer bill, the components that make up the pricing that we have designed covers both customer charge and then that combined non-fuel energy bill price, which gets to a total of $85. But because we're not recovering the kilowatts from the rooftop solar customer, we're not recovering a demand charge or a distribution charge for the infrastructure they use, whether it be a cloudy day or in the evening when it's night and there is no solar being generated. If they don't have energy storage and using all of the energy they produce and pushing it back to the grid, they're using our grid, they're using our infrastructure. So that shortfall is about $63 a month. And when you think about that, again, on the cost recovery model, somebody else is picking up that $63 because we are cost recovery based. So this is part of our challenge of the diverging customer base. But, you know, you see this simplistically for one customer. We really want to show you what this means when we cascade that and exponentially looking at that for all of our customers. So on the left, from 2017 to 2023, we have offset costs and charged other customers for the shortfall of about $18.6 million. And then as we look at 24, we estimate that amount to be about $9 million. And then if we leave it unchanged, that could potentially grow by 2032 to $240 million, kind of close to the cost of a power plant at that point. But the chart on the right also shares with you, in the beginning when this program was developed, really the costs were immaterial. We were very much engaged to promote this industry like our peers across our municipal peers and the investor owned. Really had very minimal costs, not even in 2014, it was nothing. And then by 2018, it was about $3 per every customer that didn't have rooftop solar. In 2022, it has increased to $20 a year. And now in 2024, that's $35 a year for every non-rooftop solar customer. And again, left unchecked, we feel like we have an equity issue, particularly in our service territory where there is a good amount of low-income customers. And we really tried to strive to support that equity and affordability balance. So we also included the calculation. We currently have just shy of 10,000 rooftop solar customers. And so we've done this calculation here to really demonstrate the growth of rooftop solar. And again, in the beginning, we supported it. It was a small program that was not burdensome for the rest of our customers. It has grown substantially because of our pricing design, not because of them, because of our pricing design has not changed to reflect the diverging use of how customers use our product. I mean, that's on us to make that change, and that's part of the discussion that we'll have here.
The last page in this section is really just to kind of say all of these things come together to contribute to that energy burden that we do see with our LMI customers. So we have participated in the City of Orlando's energy equity study, their task force. And you know, this is, you know, certainly they've studied what that looks like in our community. But by looking at all of these things, I think kind of the headline for us is we feel like it's time that we do need to ensure that we don't have a greater energy equity issue within our service territory than we're starting to see already. Before we go on to the next section, which is to talk about enablers, do you have any questions for us?
I mess up every time.
Okay. So there's a variety of enablers too. You know, we have invested significantly. We talked about the fact that it would have been cost prohibitive in the past to really look at our residential and small commercial customers' usage more finitely. But we have at this point, because technology has improved, the cost of it has come down, we have invested in those digital meters, which helps us on our side with that data management, but it also helps in our customer side with information to them. We'll talk a bit more about that. There's certainly no doubt that people of all types have invested in some level of in-home and energy management, and we'll talk more about what that looks like or could look like. Time of day rates, which of course we're going to be talking about in a lot more detail, but we're going to share some information on some of the successes that we've seen across the country on that. Rooftop solar adoption has increased nationwide, but certainly in our service territory, which Mindy just talked about, I have a little bit more information on that topic. And then lastly, just about energy storage. The good news is prices there are declining. So we expect that to continue and help us offset some of the challenges we have with our CO2 emissions reduction goals. So the first is these investments that we've made in digital meter infrastructure. This is really important to us because it's the backbone operational system out there that allows us to make some of these pricing changes. It gives us better, more finite information for our billing processes, just to collect information on what our customers are doing and that data. But it also gives us the opportunity to provide that helpful information back to our customers so they can further conserve in the ways that we already ask them to conserve by using less electricity in total, but also to really understand that peak demand usage that is their signal telling us what size of a power plant they want us to build on their behalf. So by looking at both of those aspects, this new technology will really help inform OUC and our customers and help us be better partners. On the next page, we just wanted to take a moment and remind you, of course, we have wonderful conservation programs in place already that we are continually striving to get further adoption of. Not to mention our free, I like to say it twice, free auditors that will come out to your home or business and help you really customize a plan for conservation. So, now in the future with these proposed changes, they would also be looking at how to help you reduce your peak demand, not just your total energy usage. That would be the big addition to this. So I'm very excited about that concept to really turn that conservation of two ways into a reality.
I had that audit, by the way. It was quite
Good, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. We actually get a lot of.
For free?
yes.
Oh, good.
And he didn't even call me Commissioner Mills.
Treated you like a real person in your real home.
There you go.
We get a lot of fan mail of those people because they really do. They love their jobs. They love going out in people's homes and helping them lower their consumption and lower their bills. Happy customers, that's what we're after. On the next page, these are a few of the tools that we're starting to see pop up in people's homes. Some of these are rather sophisticated, but some of them are pretty simple. People putting timers on lights, timers on pumps, things like that are not particularly costly can be great solutions. And even the cost of smart thermostats, programmable thermostats, has really come down in recent years. So we're excited about these because these also are enablers for ensuring that people really can look at peak demand and manage a peak demand. I want to point out a couple of key studies. There's a lot of them out there, quite frankly, but we wanted to pull out a couple that really made some, kind of the summary points that we saw across a variety of them. There's an APPA report here, American Public Power Association, a study which really shows that there is such a growing use of time of use or time of day rates. And they really have shown to decrease both electric usage overall and shift peak demand, which is what we're after. Peak shift, that is what we're after here. Those studies also show that while some rates can go up, that in smaller homes and multifamily homes that have less of those appliances that can vary it, though they tend to be the big winners in these programs. So, or I shouldn't say big winners, I should say consistent winners, because they maybe cannot vary their usage as much, but it also does not go up nearly as much during peak demand times, just naturally. The other study that we wanted to point out here is a J.D. Power study that really points to the importance of education and outreach. These programs cannot be successful without education and outreach. So again, should this proposal go through, we certainly would be looking for your support in those education outreach. It's not that we haven't started some of it, but of course, we would do a whole different level of education outreach should these proposals be approved. The next enabler I want to point out is some information that just came from our time of day pilot that we did from April 2021 to March of 2022. So what you see on the chart there, the solid lines are single family, the dotted lines are multifamily. The dark blue line on the top, that is the single family control group, as compared to in the green bar, which is just beneath it, that is the single family time of day pilot group. So what you can see is, this was done over a year. So what you can see is over that 1 year time period, they both saved in their usage of electricity overall, and they did shift the peak. You can see how they used a little more before and they used a little after. So they were able to shave that peak as Mindy described it. That's a pretty good image of it. On the multifamily, as I just said, you see a flatter curve here overall. They have less things that they can vary. And in this particular group, the control group is actually slightly under, but the actual group that was in the pilot did shift their peak. Their peak was at about, I think it was about 6 o'clock in the evening for this group, and they did shift it to about 9 o'clock in the evening. So over that year, we did see customers learn how to use this program. Some people really focused on it up front and sort of tailed off through the year. Some people had different patterns, but it just points to these will be a behavior change. We learned a lot from that pilot. We learned a lot about what kind of tools and information they needed. They gave us great feedback through surveys that we did quarterly. We learned a lot through this pilot. I'll also mention that the difference between the on-peak and the off-peak for the pilot was 7 cents. You'll hear we're going to be proposing something much less than that for the rate that we're going to be moving forward with, but I'll let Mindy get into that in a few more pages. On the next page, still about our time of day pilot, again, we talked to them each quarter. We surveyed these folks. And we surveyed them at the end of that year, and 98% gave us a satisfaction rating of satisfied or very satisfied with the program. And the only people, except for 2%, the only people who opted out of this during the pilot were people who moved. So we just, generally speaking, did not have people coming to us and saying, this is not working, I do not like this, take me out of it. That's not what we saw. We saw very high satisfaction rating. And people cited the reasons for that were both saving money and saving the environment. So they felt good about the difference in their pocketbook, and they felt good about contributing to saving the environment. So we'll turn our attention now back to solar for a moment. This is the SACE, Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, their annual report. It's their 2023 report, which came out earlier in 2024. And what they do is they try to put utilities on an even playing field. So they look at this as solar watts per customer. They look at where you are today, and they also look out into the future. They look at our 10-year site plans. They look at our public announcements, things like that, information that they gather, which they tend to do a very good job with that. So you can see a nice ranking there of kind of the Florida utilities and the solar watts per customer. And you can see OUC there is third and growing, very near second, is projected by 2026. And we wanted to point out that by the end of 2024, when we have our 2 new solar arrays open, we'll be at 1,573 watts per customer. So we're very proud of that. And you can see the couple of points there, 109 megawatts additional to this is distributed solar. That's the rooftop solar that we're talking about. 4% of our metered residential accounts. That's what that represents. That's 6.5% of single-family homes in an Osceola County where there's a lot of growth going on and a lot of new homes being built. And in many cases, solar is just being added to rooftop, almost as like another appliance to the homes. Very, very clever, effective thing that builders are doing. And it represents 11.6% of single-family homes at this point in Osceola County. So there's been some very strong growth in rooftop solar from that standpoint.
So as we talk about enablers, thank you, Linda. Really, we want to talk about why today and some of the things that are really driving some of these changes. As I shared earlier, in the early years, our financial incentives were there to help offset the cost of new technology. The chart really demonstrates that the cost of solar has come down significantly. So back in the early days in 2008, it was about $6.50 a watt. It is now currently $3.40 a watt, about half the price of that. And so while we have promoted that, there are still federal incentives available to support the program. The cost has come down, and so we're really looking at how we can really transition our pricing model to enable this next round of changes in our pricing. Really to prompt that, what's the matter? Did I miss something? Nope. Okay, sorry. It's me. Sorry about that. I lost track there for a second. So with the decrease in the price of solar, the need for the additional pricing design that really was only based on the kilowatt hour really needs to change for OUC really to reduce that supplement, and that, I don't want to call it a subsidy because it's been our policy to do that, but to offset some of the incentives that were built in the policy to really promote that and really align pricing to how the system is used. At the same time that the prices have come down on solar, we are starting to see prices come down on energy storage. We do anticipate that over time, we'll see the same type of decline. It's not quite here today. So we recognize that that is another component that as we look to promote and support the industry, support rooftop solar, support solar energy overall in our portfolio of resources, that this is the next generation of tools that are really needed. Currently, we have about 528 batteries installed in the OUC service territory, but over 10,000 rooftop solar customers. So we have a long way to go to really maximize that, but this is an enabler to help us really move that needle on the next level of pricing design.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
The 528 batteries that are installed, are those all related to the residential solar?
Yes.
Okay.
We have ours at the utility level, but those weren't counted in the 528.
It's possible that there's more than 528 out there. If there's some that are not associated with solar, we may not know about it.
Yes,
A rooftop and commercial utility.
absolutely. So thank you for pointing that out. So while the residential customers have seen that pricing decrease, we too have seen that pricing decrease. Overall, the industry has been able to modernize and advance in its production. And so you see here for us, we have also seen an 80% decrease in that price. So we can deliver utility scale solar at a much more efficient and economical manner. Even with rooftop solar, the prices coming down were about 3 times less than a residential customer. So from an economies of scale perspective, to deliver on affordability for all of our customers, we want both, but from the affordability standpoint, our decrease at the utility scale really helps us move that needle as well. Okay, questions? Now we're getting into the meat. So this is all me here. You can stop me whenever you'd like. All right. So we have spent and covered a good amount of ground over the last hour or so, sharing with you drivers, enablers, some education, how we delivered and how we designed this program. As Clint mentioned, we brought in experts, we helped our internal team, we benchmarked this information industry-wide, and we've really partnered within the leadership team to ensure we looked at all aspects of our operations, customer side, the financial side, the production side, really make sure we balanced all of those. The program we're proposing really looks at 4 different pricing programs within the overall peak shift program. So we have a demand level, which is really around fixed distribution. We have a shift and save, which Linda talked recently about related to time of day. We have Sun Choice, which is around enhancing our community solar programs. And then we have TrueNet Solar, which is around the single family home rooftop solar. All of these are really what I would say are enablers to our, Linda said it, our North Star path to clean energy. These are all things around helping us reduce the peak and then achieve that long-term goal of path to clean energy with all of the 4 criteria: affordability, reliability, sustainability, and resiliency. For each of the programs that I'm going to share with you, we give you a look at where we are today, right? So we will share exactly where we are today. We'll share the proposals on where we're asking the board to look at and approve for us later in August on these designs. And then we also have, following each of the proposals, we have examples of the impact this would have on the 3 different residential homes Linda highlighted in the diverging customer base. So you'll see a multifamily home impact, you'll see a single family home, and then you'll see a large single family home for all of the pricing designs.
Just from a timing standpoint, we're going to lose one of our commissioners at 3:45. And so let's be as concise as we can. I want her to get as much data as possible.
Okay,
Thank you.
I will do my best to be thorough and concise at the same time. Okay, here is the distribution charge. We've shared a good amount of this. The area of focus shows you that it's our non-fuel energy component that we're really looking at making changes. And we've highlighted on the diagram that you saw early in the presentation, this is where we're really focusing on transforming and carving, I would say carving out the distribution charges from the non-fuel energy. So that's where we are today. Currently, it is embedded in the non-fuel energy. So our proposal today is to really lower the non-fuel energy and establish what we are calling a demand level fixed charge. And that really, we see that as enhancing bill stability for our customers, and we'll talk more about that on the examples. It really aligns with some of the other efforts that our municipals, both within the state and across the nation, looking at best practices, really creating enhanced bill stability. And we've done a little bit of a different design. We've broken it into 3 tiers, as we've shared with you, to reflect the multifamily, single family, and the larger single family. On the right, we wanted to be very clear that with this new rate, these new tiers, depending on where you land, we are lowering the non-variable fuel 1 cent per kilowatt. So really, there are opportunities for some customers to save, but overall for the segment, it is designed to be revenue neutral, right? Meaning we're not getting more money overall for the whole segment. We're collecting the same amount of money. We're just reallocating a little bit here and there, but we'll show you more of that. Here's the distribution that we're showing you, and we've shared this several times, that about 90% of our customers will see something between a $5 increase and up to a $15 decrease. So this is the distribution of our customers in 2022, really showing you that between that 9 and 14, really very little change, plus or minus $5. But on the tail, on the left side, there are about 35% of our customers that will see some savings.
I do want to point out too, that we've had some concerns raised about, you know, what will this do to some LMI customers who, you know, perhaps live in a very inefficient apartment or small home. And I do just want to remind you that this is set at these tiered levels. Maybe go back to page 36. These tiered levels, because homes are designed not to exceed, you know, their panel size. You know, you're going to blow a breaker, basically, is what's going to happen. So that is part of the magic of this design, is it is intended for equity. That is really the concept here. We don't have this concept of panel size and how much you use at a peak built into these rates any other way. So this does try to create that equity. Why would every home pay the same amount when every home is not using electricity the same way?
Or size the same.
Or size, yeah, size the same, therefore use the same.
So here are the samples, the examples that we've provided on the far left, and you will see this for every pricing design. The colors may be slightly different, reflecting the bill components, but you will see this for every design. On the multifamily home, we've taken a sample of a 700 kilowatt customer using about 10 kilowatts a month. Being in the first tier at $5, they would see a $2 bill savings. That is about a 2% decrease in their bill. And again, most of this is driven by the kilowatt hour decrease. So the volume of kilowatts can go up and still have a lower price. The same for the single family home. We do see here as well, for a single family home using about 1,150 kilowatts, we see they would be in the $10 second tier of the demand level charge, and they too would see about $1.50 savings, or about 1%. And then for the larger homes using about 1,700 kilowatts a month, being in the third tier, they as well would see savings. So I guess the question that you might ask me is, who's going to see the offset of that? And so we did some math to say where a multifamily home might have more appliances within the home, they might slip into the second tier. And if they kept their kilowatt hours at 700, but their demand went beyond that 11, they would see a bill increase of about $3. Conversely, if the large single family home was maybe out of town and they only use 1,400 kilowatt hours that month, they too would see a decrease in the bill. No, I'm sorry, an increase in the bill of about $3 as well. So we've designed this to be what we call revenue neutral, but there will be small changes and they will vary month by month because there is the impact of the kilowatt hour that has come down. While the demand level will remain fixed, the kilowatt hour will change monthly. The demand level is set based on a rolling 12 months. So it may or may not change, but there is a lot more stability in that demand level pricing than there is month by month. So in the winter months where you might have a cold spell, you might use more kilowatt hours, but you might see that a lower bill because that 1 cent reduction may have a bigger impact. Questions on that? So,
Well, maybe just that last sentence, that the idea here is to go to a 12-month cycle on that demand charge. So it's just whatever's happened in the last 12 months.
yes.
Okay, so it won't reflect a spike that you had because all the Europeans visited your house and spent the night, took a lot of showers.
Well, if you if you use your appliances very differently and you ran, let's say, you had your doors open, you had your air conditioner going, you did multiple loads of laundry and used the dishwasher at the same time, you might set a different peak during that period. But that's probably the exception. But that would be a case where it would be outside of your normal pattern because you'd have a lot more activity happening in your home. We might see that, in the summer where the doors are open and, you have your air conditioning going. But normally that would not be the case because really the kilowatt hour price is coming down. So shifting to time of day, we currently do today have a time of day program. It is only available to our commercial customers, and it is complex. You can see on the right, we have a summer on peak, off peak, we have summer shoulder, winter shoulder. We have a little more complexity, and it was designed back in the 90s to really promote conservation, really engage our commercial customers, really try to deliver value to them, but the complexity fell a little flat. And so we didn't get the penetration level. And now certainly as we look to relaunch this program and expand it to our residential customers, this complexity does not work. So moving forward into what we're proposing, and in all of the demand level is set to launch in 2025, a year plus a couple of months from now. This is not designed to launch until 2026. Time of day is further out another year, fall of 2026. So this expands our time of use pricing to residential and small commercial while simplifying the design. Okay, it is too simple, an on peak and an off peak, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. for the peak. Every other time will be off peak pricing. As Linda mentioned in the pilot, we set that differential as 7 cents. Here we're setting that at 2 cents, really to allow our customers to gradually embrace the change, to create what we again call that bill neutral, that revenue neutral. We're not looking to collect more money here. This is about changing behavior and encouraging use to shave the peak and lower the demand, which for us translates to infrastructure costs. It does signal to the customers another way for them to conserve. Again, it's not just the kilowatt, it's when the kilowatt is used that is also very important. I do share here that on average, and this is based on OUC's data, about 30% of our residential and small commercial customers use energy on the peak. So that means 70% is used off peak, and this is not changing any behavior. It's just the way that it is now. And again, we're always aligning this to our path to clean energy. But I want to be clear here. Again, we've had a lot of questions to Linda's point, like, what does this really mean on the pricing side? We currently have our prices, October of 24, we have 10 cents and 65 cents for the first 1,000 kilowatt hours. In October 2026, this is going down to 9 cents, 9.1 cents. And then during the peak period, there will be a 2-cent premium. So the stability around demand level, you'll see when I show you the examples, really helps enhance stability. And again, using our data, only 30% of our customer load is incurred during on-peak now. So I'll show you examples that really show that it's, again, price neutral. But I want to make sure I'm very clear. This is not surge pricing. We heard that as well on the website. This is not surge pricing. We are tariff-based. Our prices stay the same. The board approves our pricing. Because there's high demand, we don't change our pricing. These prices are set, again, approved by the board, designed to be cost recovery based. not designed to recover more for OUC. It is about equity and cost recovery.
I think there was also another concern that's been raised that we're just raising prices during the on-peak. To be clear, as Mindy's pointing out here, we're lowering prices during the off-peak and raising it during the on-peak with just that differential of 2 cents. Just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Thank you.
70/30 is without any price signals today.
Yep, no price signals, the way that it is today, nothing influencing our, I mean, it's data from our system today. There are no price signals other than a conservation signal for usage above 1,000 kilowatts. So looking at the example here again, we see this is exactly if the usage does not change. Again, the 70-30 split, 30% stays on peak, 70% is off peak. You can see that the multifamily home, again, with the same 700 kilowatt hours, 30%, they do fall in that first tier of demand. They would see $1.89 as a savings. Again, about a 2%. We're building on the first pricing. You can see here $1.89. On the second, for a single family home with 1,150 kilowatts, here again, they're going to see small savings of $1.33, really less than a very, very small decrease. And then on the larger family, again, a savings as well. Okay, but I want to show you what it looks like. This is no change at all, right? People just do as they've always done, and the price signals don't do anything. We want the price signals to do something. And so let me share what that looks like. If they just shift 10% of their load, if they shift 10% of their load, they have the potential to save up to $3.30 a month for those multifamily home customers using 700 kilowatts a month. It does require them to shift usage. So that may mean they do their laundry and their dryer after the 8 p.m. timeframe or before 2 p.m. But there is an opportunity for them to save. It is even about the same for the single family home. They too, with 1,150 kilowatts, can save about $3.63. And then for the larger single family home, they have more that they can save, but all around the single and large family home, about 2.5% of their bill, while again, the smaller multifamily, the area that really probably needs a little more attention, has about a 3.5% savings.
If I could,
Absolutely.
again, there's been concerns raised about people who perhaps for medical equipment reasons or things like that may not be able to, shift their energy usage. That's why we really wanted to model out what would happen if you weren't able to do anything. And I think, again, I'd just like to remind you, commissioners, that we do offer energy auditors that now with both of these two programs being proposed, if we did indeed move forward with both of these two that Mindy just covered, they would be looking at how to help customers lower their peak demand also, not just use electricity in total. So that would be an avenue that we would really want to provide to those customers that would have difficulty shifting their peak.
So I understand your example. You're shifting 10%. Is that 10% of the total or 10% of the 30%?
10% of the 30%. They would still use this. Say this again?
And only 3%. You're going to 27% or you're going to 20%?
Going to 20%, 80-20
Okay.
instead of 70-30.
Okay.
10% of the total, I'm sorry. Sometimes,
What did when you had your control sample group, what were the people that changed the peak and used less? Was that a 10%? Was that what that looked like?
yeah, I can,
It was for the single family
Yeah, I
home,
remember the multi was not.
but the multifamily was not.
but I think it was 10.6 for the single family home. they shifted their usage. And again, they were, they had tools, they had education, they understood the value of that. Are we doing okay on 3:45? Okay. So now I'm shifting to the community solar programs. This is the program we currently have well, it's the program that we had. It has now been closed. It was closed because of a temporary spike in fuel. We are looking to relaunch that. It was a program, the community solar farm program was designed to allow our customers to participate and help us lean forward into the future on that path to clean energy. The program is subscription-based, so they can choose what is best for them. There's no upfront cost to participate in the program. And so the program allowed them to choose whether it be 10% or 50%. They could choose what best aligned with their pricing, again, to help us move into the future. But as we noted here in 2022, fuel, and as we shared earlier, natural gas prices spiked. And so to ensure that all of our customers benefited from the fixed price of our purchase power utility scale solar agreements, we closed the program and allowed all of our customers to share in that price savings. Our program moving forward really is aligned to a similar program that we had, but we will be looking at same subscription base, but really transitioning the renewable energy certificates in the name of our customer. So this is a request we've heard by several customers to really own their own renewable energy credit and renewable energy certificates. And so this program has a new dynamic, which will have that component added to it. We do anticipate launching this in 2024. And that is the one program that will come out a little earlier than the other ones because it is a modification of a program we already had. Add, Linda. Nope. Okay. Okay. So let's look at our rooftop solar pricing. Today we currently have net metering, and that I'll try to be brief about how this works. The way that
Understand it.
yeah, okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, it takes a bit. And if you're not, this is not it's unique to our industry. So the way the net metering policy works is a customer receives whatever they receive. Let's say they receive 1,000 kilowatts from OUC. I don't know how much they've generated, but I know they've received 1,000 kilowatts from OUC. They sell back to OUC 450 kilowatts. It is netted at, sorry, what? Kilowatt hours. Kilowatt hours, sorry. It is netted at the meter. So at the full retail price, they are getting a bill for 650 kilowatts. Yeah, so 1,000 comes in. Oh, sorry. 550. Sorry. Yes, we've changed our presentation a few times, so apologize for that. So 1,000 comes in, 350 goes, sells to the grid, 300. I'm sorry, 350. I'm going to get myself all messed up here. But the net at the meter is what is billed to the customer, net. And that is billed at the retail amount. So again, we've included a design related to the full use of the grid. All right, so the new proposed TrueNet Solar separates out the components. It says, if you receive 1,000 kilowatts from OUC, you will pay the same price as every other customer, every other residential, small commercial customer pays at the same rate. 1,000 kilowatts you receive from OUC. And over a period of time, and we'll share that in the next few slides, we will be decrementing down the value that is sold back to excess energy that is sold back to OUC. So we are separating the two components. One coming in at full retail and one over a 7-year period, decrementing down to the retail fuel price. And again, this allows us to recover these costs associated with using the grid, really using our assets, whether it be the transformer, the substation, whether it be a cloudy day, whether it be the evening, using our assets to either sell back or get the energy provided. We wanted to share with you what our other peers have done recently, and maybe not so recently. We have looked at our other municipals across the state of Florida, from JEA to GRU to City of Tallahassee, Lakeland, and KUA. Each have taken steps to transition the former net metering policy and have made these changes. OUC's plan is the last plan from the municipals that has made no changes. So really looking forward, now we do have a bit of a different design than some of the other utilities. We're trying to be thoughtful in the way that we deliver this and really allow our customers time to embrace this while the price of energy storage also continues to decline. But let me move forward on that because we are a late mover here. We're probably one of the last movers on this, but we want to show you our proposal. So we are proposing for this to be over 7 years, a glide path of 7 years. In 2025, we are proposing just to change the billing methodology. So with that, some customers will see a change, because if they use more than 1,000 kilowatts, they will likely see a change from the conservation rating. But other than that, there should be no change to the customers in 2025. It is 2026 that we will start to reduce the non-fuel energy component of the bill, and then annually decrement that down 20% so that by October 2030, we are reimbursing customers at the retail fuel rate. Energy storage, if implemented, will allow customers to continue to get the full value of the energy produced, because instead of selling that to the grid, they'll be able to use it and get the full value of that. But I will show you that in the examples that we have coming up. So like the other pricing changes, we are going to share with you the impact to the rooftop solar customers for the True Net Solar program. So if a residential customer in 2025 has a 500 kilowatt hour monthly bill, which is 1,000 kilowatts from OUC and 500 that they sell back to the grid, for a net bill of 500, they will see in 2025 the impacts of just the $5 demand level charge. That will be assessed to all customers. So that will be the first change that they see in 2025. In 2026, as we begin to decrement down the non-fuel energy component, that $5 will increase to $6.93. So it's cumulative. It's $5 plus $2 as we move into 2026. By the time we hit 2030, that bill increase will be about $34.07. And that is compared, as I showed you earlier, to the $63 for that differential, because we're only making gradual changes on our demand level pricing. So we're not going all of the way to that demand charge, really looking at taking gradual steps towards price equity across all of our customers for the different use of our products. So Let me go back for a second and see if there's questions before I share with you the examples on energy storage.
I'm sorry, but one of our commissioners has a hard stop at 3:50. So Commissioner Gonzalez, I want to hear your comments or if you have any questions before you have to leave.
First off, I apologize that I have to leave, but I really appreciate the extensive information and data that's been presented. I think we are all realizing how important the changing environment is affecting the delivery of energy, but also the pricing of energy. So on that note, I apologize that I'm leaving, but I plan to watch the YouTube recording this evening to hear your concerns. And I'm very thankful that this response has been at this level, that the community has come out to ask, and that we understand all sides of this issue, because that's the only way we'll make it happen. So again, apologize and thank you.
So much.
Okay. Any other questions that you may have? Sure. On this example, we did keep everything the same. We did, what we've seen from our rooftop solar customers is that their load pattern has not changed. There's no pricing signals for them to change that. But that makes sense. Why would you change what you've done? It's worked and there's nothing there to really prompt that change. So we have kept that. In this model, we've kept it the same and recognizing that as we walk through the change on energy storage, I think you can start to see the real value of that. But we do see, of course, we've started gradual. The time of day pricing has a 2-cent differential. So that 2-cent differential is really about educating our customers. Will that 2 cents change over time? I am certain at some point in time, but that's not in our plan, in our multi-year plan at this time. It is really about gradually introducing, and as Linda shared, educating our customers on this. So while there is an opportunity there to save a little bit if they change their load pattern, it's really a small amount because the differential is very small. But as that grows and that changes, there is some more opportunity there if their load pattern changes. And so we need to make sure that we do the education as well for all of our customers, because really it's about the peak. Really it's about how do we levelize out and expand the use of our assets for the community, because our rooftop solar customers use our assets. We are, in some cases, their backup, and on a rainy day, we're their energy source. So we don't want them to feel like they can't turn on their lights and it's not there. We want to be just as reliable and affordable for everyone. So really, to your point, Clint, there are opportunities for them to have additional savings, but we didn't model them because the impact at this point of a 2% difference is relatively small. But expanding conservation programs and implementing an energy storage rebate, we are committed to empowering our customers to really leverage the full value of their system. We are looking to and will establish 3 tiers of an energy storage rebate program with a focus on existing rooftop solar customers, so they get a rebate that will be higher than new customers, really helping them leverage the system, knowing that they've been committed to this, recognizing the value that they've provided. Again, the second tier will be for new customers. It'll be a little lower. And then as we introduce time of day pricing, we'll be looking to introduce that for all of our customers so that they can really leverage the time of day. And again, as the pricing variance changes, there may be opportunities for that. From a funding perspective, we've made a commitment on our Path to Clean Energy. The funding for this program is included in that Path to Clean Energy. We got approved last year up to a 1% to meet our production and Path to Clean Energy. That will be funded through this program.
Mindy, I've not done any exploration in this area. Can you give us some relative cost of what batteries that
Okay.
would provide, capture all of the energy that needs to be stored would cost?
So I think Linda's probably the better expert on the price of the battery, maybe $10,000
Installed.
installed.
I mean, they vary, of course, depending on the size of a battery that you're gonna get, but they have come down roughly by half.
And what type of rebate are we looking at?
So we're still working on that number. That will be launching in 2025. We're still working on that. Well, we'll have that offered in 2024. I apologize. We're still working on that number as we fine tune that. We've been really trying to focus on all of the programs here, but we will have a meaningful rebate. You know the number? I don't know the number. Okay. Okay, let me show you the sample of what this looks like. We took the pricing in 2030, where a rooftop solar customer would have a bill increase of about $34. And then we applied that if they use all of the energy from their energy storage system and they use it on peak, again, not changing their load pattern, they would be able to lower their bill to actually lower than it is at $71.71 currently. That would include the impact from the demand level, but they would have the opportunity to get the full value of all the energy they use. Of course, to your point, Mayor, there is a cost around the battery, but there was a cost around the rooftop solar system as well. It does provide the customer full value, but I think at the same time, they probably still will use the grid on a rainy day, but a lot less. It would be a longer duration. They would be able to be self-sufficient. So those are the four aspects of our program. We will start launching the solar in 2024. That will be the relaunch of community solar. In 2025, we'll be launching the demand level and then the TrueNet Solar program. Also, we will having that rollout of the energy rebate. And then in 2026, we'll be transitioning to time of day pricing for all of our customers. Then in 2027, we'll be looking to roll the time of day pricing out to all of our commercial customers, as well as refining some other pricing for them. And again, all of these changes will come forward to the board. We will bring them forward in the July workshop, July pricing and budget workshop. Again, we'll highlight these changes, but this is a standalone. It will not have the granularity that we've presented here. And the actual pricing changes will come forward in the August timeframe, consistent with the cadence that we approve, perhaps traditional pricing changes that we're implementing this year. Okay, I gave you a lot of information. I know that. So I'm happy to stop and answer questions that you may have.
I do have one question about the battery storage and the rebate program here. I was going back here and looking at the utilities that we've studied, and I know that this is a nationwide phenomenon, a recognition of these issues. Do you happen to know whether either across these Florida utilities or nationwide, if a rebate for energy storage is a common component of these programs or not?
So I don't believe in our Florida municipals that they have had that energy storage component. I do believe in some of the leading large public power council utilities, they do have that energy component. But I could stand corrected. Linda, do you have?
No, you're correct. And you see it in particular on the West Coast. You tend to see it in the Northeast. It tends to be places where energy is more expensive. So it's easier to justify that investment. There's even some very creative programs that we're watching where the utility compensates, I'll just say, the customer in some manner for some use of their battery. there's some kind of contract between the utility and the customer for use of the battery. So that's really taking it many steps further. But we need to start with a good solid battery rebate here and figure out, what works best for our customers here.
Yeah, but the key is takeaway. You are aware and you're
Oh, yes,
monitoring best practices to incorporate it into ours.
absolutely. As we have with all of this. Yes.
Have we, OUC, I've been here a year, or the city ever given indication that what we pay today for net metering, if you put this in, we're gonna buy this? to
No.
eternity?
No, we don't have any contracts. Our prices change. The board approves that.
You may know this, and if you don't, we can figure it out. What are our solar companies, what do they tell their customers how long it typically takes to pay off a system, right? I mean, is that 5 years? Is that 10 years? Is that 15 years? I guess it just varies depending on.
So it varies, of course, in the early stages, when if we go back to that chart that shows the decline in prices in the beginning, it was probably closer to 15, 20 years to pay down a solar system because they were more expensive.
Right.
But as the price has come down, we look at between 7 and 10 years. It has really shortened because the price has come down significantly.
I'll just add, it's a wide variance.
Sure.
I think there's examples of where it took 30 years, in the early days to pay off the solar system and people were not doing it for financial gain. And I think that's still, I think some people still put on much larger systems.
Around if it's sized appropriately for the home.
And you said there's ongoing incentives, and that's federal, state, local, and those come and go, right? I mean, those are, they depending on politics, administration, tax code, sometimes they're better, sometimes they're worse.
There's been no state. Yeah, it's been a long time since the state has, I
Probably answer that later, but
I'm not aware of one from the state level. The federal one has been around for a couple of years for sure.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. No other questions on this segment?
But the communication stakeholders chart, yeah.
Okay, terrific. So we really want to ensure that these proposed changes, it's very clear what we're after. So we were careful with our words on these. We really do want to empower our customers to participate in their energy future. We want to provide them with timely information, effective tools. We want to enable them to help manage their energy use to both conserve and save money. And through that, what we're after is collectively, this is kind of a one for all for one proposition, but we collectively improve equity and we collectively improve grid sustainability by reducing our peak demand. So you can see some objectives here, and that is to evolve that relationship between OUC and our customers. We know we need to improve our education. Clint pointed that out in the beginning. We've not asked our customers to ever understand what it is that we do. So really helping them to engage in the way they use their energy and know why. That requires that we increase their knowledge base and to promote energy use in different energy conservation in two different ways, how much they use and when they use it. And that we also want to make sure that time of day pricing and better informed customers, that can effectively add capacity back to the grid by changing that peak demand profile. So those are really the things that we are after in this program. So as we've proposed this, you kind of heard us say these words over and over again. On the next page, our outreach, which we've said, we realize education, outreach, engagement, these are really important aspects of this program. So in the very short term, this is really while we're in this proposed phase. There's only so much we can do while we're while we're proposing this, but we are really working to inform and gain awareness from all the stakeholders in the community that have a large stake in this, quite frankly, so that we can collaboratively hear their response to what we're proposing. And then there's a longer term segment here that will come when and if this proposal is approved, that would really turn into a major multi-channel branded information campaign, helping our customers understand what's coming and how it's going to impact them long before it does. So that's kind of the two components of this. So on the next page, I'll share a little bit about the initial outreach and communications. So we did some initial on-bill insert and message, of course, announcing this workshop. So through that and other emails, we reached almost 190,000 customers. They received that initial peak shift email with the announcement, and over 92,000 website visits in the first hours, 24 hours of the launch of that website. 40 web form submissions were submitted, and you've been provided that input for transparency purposes. So you had a very good idea of what people's impressions were and what they're saying. We'll continue to update that website as we have more information to provide. This presentation will be provided there, as well as some of the concepts will have their own spot on that webpage to enhance education. We do have a diverse set of stakeholders here. As a municipal utility, we serve everyone. So we really want to make sure that those diverse perspectives, all that input is desired and welcome. So we have had stakeholder engagement that has included a focus on all of these. We do have a wide array of customers that use our grid, and it's important that we hear their diverse perspectives based on their diverse experiences. So that's what we're in the midst of at the moment. Many of these, that's okay, you can move to this page. Many of those on the prior page, we've held no, you're fine. We've had first conversations with, and we're in the midst, we've probably scheduled, basically half of the second conversations that we will be having, and that's just the start. So I'm not going to read all of these comments. There's a few pages that look like this with a lot of text on them, but for transparency, we did want to make sure that you have a good feel for what we're hearing, the initial reactions, because that's very important. So we've gathered a lot of diverse local viewpoints. 20 stakeholder conversations have been had so far. I mentioned the web form, and of course you've received the letters to the commissioners. And I'll just start by saying, though, many do understand the need to reduce peak demand. They kind of get that. I'm going to guess the folks in the room here, these are some of our more educated customers that understand these concepts. Many of our customers do not. But it's a mixed bag, and we need to be prepared to educate and outreach for all. Many have, as they've seen these different programs coming out, they've expressed the desire to participate in this. They've expressed interest in learning more. They understand that changing their behavior helps shift that peak, and they understand how this does lay the foundation for important things to come and eventually meeting our CO2 emissions goals. We know that, as many have reminded us, it's important to leverage local partners here to reach the community. We have a lot of partners that we can leverage, so we'll be looking to do that. People have suggested holding meetings and focus groups and providing information in multiple languages. All great ideas, all things that we will take into consideration, and I can't imagine why we wouldn't leverage all of those. On the next page, you'll start to see some varying, I'm highlighting some varying reactions. For almost anyone, change is difficult. It's new, it can be scary. We get that. We did not expect this to be, all people, yay, saying yay. So as expected, a lot of stakeholders are really eager for more information, and they're asking for more details. completely understood. They'd like to understand the recommendations. They'd like to understand and see the models. They would like us to share more information on the proposed rates. They'd like to, some people have some belief that these fixed charges or time of day rates are going to hurt our low income customers. And a belief that the program will just simply increase their bills. So all valid concerns, all concerns that we look forward to engaging with customers and working to hear those, really understand where they're coming from, to make sure we really understand their perspective before we think we know the answer, but working through those with them. On the right side of the page there is this concern about vulnerable groups, valid concern. We've spent a lot of time thinking through this and trying to understand it too, but these are valid. Concerns about seniors, disabled people, again, those that may have dependency on medical equipment or dependency on the temperature in their home for comfort or for health reasons. And then supporting renters, renter are people who are in a position, whether it's multifamily or single family, but they're renters and they're not in a position that they can make those improvements to their homes. Excellent. That's true today, by the way, but yes, those are things that, we continue to talk to partners and even the city about how can we partner together to make a difference for some of those. So these really show that there is a lot of interest in our programs. There's a lot of interest in making sure that no one is adversely impacted. We tried to present some information here today to maybe alleviate some of those concerns for you or for some other people, to show kind of that flat curve that you do see with multi-family dwellings. And hopefully that we really have designed these programs so that there's no unintended consequences for that particular set of stakeholders.
I want
Were
to
you
take
gonna say
you back.
something?
Yes. I want to challenge you to connect with the city and those groups that are impacted, who you named: seniors, disabled, low income, multifamily. I challenge you to proactively combine with the city resources and provide information to these groups who assist those individuals. Let them know what programs we're doing, where assistance areas may come in, where they can help educate as well as further the cause. So we're getting feedback from employees and customers. I want us to provide feedback to those agencies who help.
Thank you. Appreciate
Okay.
that comment.
And the city must partner with you because they have access to many of those groups.
Yes, we have started that process through reaching out to a variety of organizations, including United Way and some agencies, but there's more to be done. I'm not going to pretend there's not more to be done, and there is, and that's a wonderful idea to partner further with the city.
We have a very robust neighborhood and communications department, so we have close to 200 neighborhood associations, so getting information to the leadership of the neighborhood associations would probably be very useful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
But the good news is that many of these people, they're worried about it, but they're not going to see a big change. They might see positive movement. But a small family home, somebody on a fixed income, elderly, it's not going to see a change when it comes to the provided they don't have rooftop solar. They're not going to see a change.
That's correct. Yes, thank you. Yeah, and there is, like we mentioned, there's a large communication planned, but there's often this unease in the early days. So I appreciate the getting out to some of the agencies or NGOs that serve them early is exactly what we like to do. Thank you. So the next page is the feedback on, I feel like I missed a page. Oh, yes, thank you. Feedback on our conservation program. So I love this feedback. People basically saying, you've got wonderful conservation programs already, but the nudge is gain more adoption, gain more adoption, gain more adoption. It is our forever challenge here to gain more adoption with our conservation programs. So I think it's wonderful. And what I really, in my vision and our vision, is to take those conservation programs to the next level, again, to make sure that they're not just addressing overall energy use, but they're addressing that demand level, that peak demand. So, because that's the signal that our customers are giving to tell us how much generation to build. If we can get them to reduce that signal, then we can build less generation or avoid and push out into the future costly generation. So that's, again, that's what we're after. The last page here, I want to make sure that you're very aware of the feedback that we're getting on TrueNet Solar. The majority of the negative feedback we've received, of course, has been on this program. I think that's probably no surprise. It has seen some strong opposition. You've seen some of the letters already, and certainly the comments through the web forums and some other online media. But there's concerns that these changes will cause a decline in rooftop solar sales, impacting businesses, killing jobs. Customers have made an investment and with an expected return. These are some of the reasons. Customers who installed solar to help their environment, and they're concerned that we're looking at it, we're not in alignment with that. They would prefer to see some grandfathering as opposed to, or in addition to, the 7-year step down. They pointed to studies that indicate rooftop solar customers cost less to serve than non-rooftop solar customers. So those are many reasons. They do like the battery storage rebate. We've heard some nice partnering comments, such as local solar vendors would love to bid on our utility scale solar projects. And of course, they've certainly voiced that OUC is one of the only municipal utilities left in the state. And for Central Florida, certainly the option for a local solar incentive. Conversations we have with them have been very professional and good learning, good listening on both sides, but still many more conversations I'm sure to have. As I mentioned, we've had initial meetings with most of the groups to gain this feedback. We're exchanging information and setting up second meetings, which I'm sure will turn into more than that. But we wanted you to be aware of where we are on the feedback. I don't know if you have any other questions on the feedback or any of the other parts of the communication plan at this time.
Would you mind sending around, I didn't notice that in the comments that I read prior to this meeting, but these studies that indicate the solar rooftop customers cost less to serve. I'm just interested in what that is saying. So
we have received some information from Sun Solar United Neighbors that we can forward to you.
thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, Clint, closing and next steps.
Yeah, I will be brief because we have a lot of folks I know that would like to address the commission, and I know we'll have an opportunity for some final closing comments as we complete the time for the community to speak. So next slide, really just to basically reiterate what we heard from the team, and certainly a lot of slides. And again, I do want to thank those that sat through it and listened, and hopefully were informed perhaps on a few items. But the landscape is changing, and there's just no denying that. And pricing structures has to be a part of that discussion, has to be part of that change. I think we all recognize that, cost causation is real, and I hope we can agree that folks should pay for their appropriate cost to serve as we are there meeting the needs, whether the sun is out or not. I think this applies equally to some electric vehicle type customers that initially may have some concerns with the fixed distribution component. But from a cost standpoint, if they want the ability to charge multiple vehicles at the exact same time during the peak hours when everything else is running, they should have that option. But I hope we would all agree that should be paid for. In fairness, on the time of day program, I think folks would appreciate the opportunity to perhaps fuel up in the middle of the night. Because as a customer, you may be indifferent in many of your situations from a charging standpoint. You come home from work and you just want it to be charged to a certain percentage by morning time. Without a price signal, you will just charge when you come home. And all that does is add to the peak to the system, and quite honestly adds more cost to all of us as utility users. And so if we can together figure out ways to not keep building peak and keep adding to the cost of infrastructure for all of us, we figure out a way to spread it out. The theory is we would all benefit from that. And so I think that's an important piece here as we continue to have more dialogue. We certainly want to levelize the playing field. I think it's an important aspect. And we want to try to give customers options. And I do believe that pricing options work. We've done this over 15 years ago on the water side, and the pricing signals helped from a conservation standpoint. We've worked with our Power Pass customers that use that program that prepay. And we've seen conservation through price signals, through education, and through awareness. So again, a little bit back to my opening comment, the industry has let the customers down, if you will, on educating about how complicated our business is. And I will tell you myself as a CEO and all the other CEOs that I talk to, that is an opportunity that we have. We recognize that. These terms of fixed and variable and demand and energy, it's going to take some time. And we recognize that. And so we're trying to some degree, make up for lost time. But I think that's been an important element for OUC's program to lay out this multi-year, to allow us all to get educated, to allow us to collect the data, to understand as each individual customers, how do we use power? And as these pricing changes come, how do we have an opportunity as individual customers to make adjustments and save? So I'll leave it at that. My opening slide was on the next one. I don't think I need to go through that. Just it is a balance on the next slide. It is a continuous balance to manage reliability, affordability, sustainability, and resiliency. There's no silver bullet. There's one no important than the other. It is a continuous balance for OUC as we move towards our net zero CO2 emissions goal. Lastly, again, as we talk about next steps, OUC will have a pricing budget workshop, which is on our full budget, O&M capital budget. We have a variety of pricing adjustments that are going on in addition to what we are talking here today. Again, the first time in my history that I'm aware of, we've had a dedicated pricing public workshop outside of the standard commission meeting. Because it's such an important subject, and it's important that we give time to the community and listen and also hopefully be heard. And then depending on feedback we get from the commissioners, August could be an approval, but that's all deterministic here as we move forward. So I'm going to close it down because I know we have over 25 members that want to speak. So President, that's it from me at the moment.
Well, with that many, and we need to hear from the public. Look, we've been at it for a little over 2 hours. I'm going to call for a 10-minute break. Let you stretch for a minute, restroom, whatever, phone calls, and right at 4:30 sharp, I will reconvene this meeting. So you have until about 12 minutes or so. Take a break. If I can have everyone start gathering. It's 4:28 and we're gonna start back in 2 minutes. All right, oh, there we go, okay. As we resume now, before we start the public comment portion of our meeting, I want to remind all the members of the public, right now we are at 27 who would like to address us. When you get to the mic, briefly state your name, address, and whether you're an OUC customer. It's imperative with that many who want to present that you limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. You'll see some kind of light or you'll hear the gavel at the 3-minute mark. So be concise with your remarks. Commissioners, you can direct any questions you have to the staff or officers now when contacting us with a response to a question you may have to validate or verify facts that you hear from the public. And then finally, with so many people in the room and those outside wanting to get in, once you give your remarks, if you would like to proceed to conference room 147 on the first floor, we have TV monitors and mics down there as well. You can follow through on live stream, and that will allow some of the people outside to come in and sign up to speak as well. And we have other public attendees as they come into the commission chambers. So we're going to proceed. If you can govern yourselves accordingly with that, I would be greatly appreciative. And remember, we're going to respect each speaker and allow those individuals to give their comments in a respectful manner. All right, let's begin. Our first speaker. And I believe staff will be escorting you. Paul? Do we have someone?
Nobody wants to speak.
My name is Patty Sheehan. I live at 1213 Minnesota Street, and I have been an OUC customer for over 30 years. You're going to have to bear with me because I'm really upset because I made a $20,000 investment in solar. I was part of the city's solar program that Chris Castro had at the City of Orlando as part of our sustainability program. I had no idea that the major investment that I was putting into rooftop solar, because I believe in the environment, I believe that climate change disproportionately impacts minority communities, and I wanted to do the right thing. And now I'm being told by my public utility company that I used to trust, frankly, that my $100 a month that I spend in electricity that's offset by my panels that I paid for is now now that they're telling me I'm going to get 500 kilowatt, they're saying, oh, no, it's only going to be 500 kilowatt hours. It's only going to impact people by $30. No, it's going to impact me by $60. So you've taken my investment of $20,000, okay, that I amortized and I counted on to pay for my power bill. You're going to reduce that by 60%. And you want to know why I'm upset? Because I wanted to do the right thing. I also drive an electric vehicle, and now I'm being told I'm going to have to try to figure out when to charge that now because I'm some kind of a drain on the system. I did solar and I do electric because I believe in climate change and I believe this is the right thing to do. And I wanted to be a person who could set an example for others. And if I had put that money in the bank, it would have been safer. I'm horrified by what just happened today and what I'm seeing. It's not fair. It's not fair, not just to me, but all these other people that trusted OUC. It's just not the right way to do business. I guess I'll enjoy my $20,000 bottle of water, but it should be more than that. There is no way, y'all, that the customer charge that's being passed on is $63 per month. My $100 bill that I used to have from OUC, there is absolutely no way that $63 a month of that was infrastructure charges. I just want to be treated fairly. When I've met with OUC representatives over the course of over a year and a half, because I knew this was coming because I was given a push poll that was rife with misinformation, by the way, and I tried to give a better perspective of actual solar use instead of the nonsense and misinformation that was part of that poll. And all I've gotten is more, this process has gotten worse and worse and worse. And I've tried as a policymaker to explain my position. And I've tried as a customer to explain my position. And not only have I been ignored, this proposal has gotten worse and worse and worse. And the only way that I can see that, the crazy thing is all this stuff about peak, I am generating the power during the peak. This is a terrible proposal and it should not go through.
Thank you. Our second speaker. Staff, if you've got them, if you could line up 3 or 4, it would expedite things, staff.
Good afternoon, President Mills, Commissioners, Mayor, Mr. Bullock. I'm Michael Cohen. My address is 2505 Donaldson Drive. I am an OUC customer. Why are we here? OUC has 1.5% net metering customers based on the most current publicly available data at the Public Service Commission. Solar United Neighbors has done 88 solar co-ops in Florida, helping homeowners install 26 megawatts, valued at almost $63 million. Growth in Orlando and St. Cloud can partially be offset with rooftop solar, and time of use can be minimized with residential storage. Your new net metering proposal does not grandfather in existing solar customers, something that has never been proposed before. Even the vetoed solar net metering bill 741 grandfathered existing solar customers for 20 years. Many people have loans that will be difficult to pay. Future solar co-ops in this area may be in jeopardy because PV solar won't pay out. Additionally, Sun, Self, and the Nature Conservancy have formed a coalition to receive $156 million of federal Solar for All funds. This will provide about 10,000 Floridians, low and moderate income households with low or no cost solar. I doubt if these funds will go to Orlando or St. Cloud because of OUC's new solar policy. They may lose out on additional IRA dollars also. Let's start over so we can bring new ideas and work as collaborators to develop a rate structure that meets everyone's needs. We want to continue championing this progressive utility in city. By the way, some lobbied in Tallahassee against the devastating HB 1277 municipal power bill this year. OUC is becoming the ticket master of utilities with your proposed fees and rate variations. And why should residential customers pay for future demand usage for data centers? Let's be the ancestor that our generations to come will look back on with pride. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, gentlemen, madam. My name is Kevel Fox, 9612 Portofino Drive. I've been an OC customers for 6 years or so. One of the last slides mentioned heat and rising temperatures impact some groups more than others. And OUC's goal is to become net zero by 2050. Why? Why is that the goal? Well, it's because things are getting hotter. And it seems to me that the murder of stable net metering reimbursement is kind of like the frog in the boiling pot fable. We still boil. It may happen over a period of time, but taking away that incentive is just going to make the whole rooftop solar in Orlando disincentivized. To Clint's point, Clint mentioned the EV charging right at the end of his thing. I emailed OUC when I bought an EV and I got my solar, and I said, hey, just tell me, when should I charge my EV? They said, well, we don't have time of charging right now, so don't worry, just charge your EV whenever you want. I really think there's a communication thing that could be done before we need the hammer of this price incentivizing, like we're going to make it more expensive at a particular time of day. Why don't you just tell me? If you could go out in the bill every month and say, if you have an EV, it would really help our leveling if you would charge your EV if you're able between these hours. Nobody responded to my email even after I asked, never mind affirmatively encouraging people to do what they can. And I disagree that it's too complicated for customers to understand. If you just give them a chance, they certainly understand the peak energy demand in the hottest part of the day. So basically, there were three things in the very, very long PowerPoint thing: the gradual changes for the new plan, the price equity, and price signals to smooth peak demand. And I kind of touched on the price signals. I think, I understand if it's more expensive, that encourages people to use it, but we can also just ask, and they never even responded to my question. So price equity, 10,000 homeowners, according to our slides, invested private funds, my family's inability to invest that money in my child's education in rooftop solar, and under the understanding that that investment would be recouped over a certain period of time. But now that's all gone. It's probably not going to be recouped. Not made a profit, but just recoup the investment in that rooftop solar before the end of my lifetime. I'm not going to see it because of the gradual decrease because of the tens of thousands of dollars we invested are never going to be recouped. And so that certainly is going to completely disincentivize a solar rooftop. The other point that I noticed in the PowerPoint slides is that you pointed out is that it seemed that those 10,000 homeowners somehow reached 40% of the total solar capacity of Orlando Utilities Commission, a commission to produce energy. So 40% of the megawatt output was achieved by private people putting their private funds into solar energy. How does that make any sense? And this is when the expense was really, really high. As they pointed out, it's come down a lot, but still the latest slide that they had, the price for private was, I think, 3 times the price of the commission's price. In any case, please do not disincentivize rooftop solar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Charles Behrens, 1500 Mount Vernon Street, Orlando. I'm an OUC customer. The presenters kept calling us customers, but we're not. OUC is owned by the citizens, making us citizen owners of our own utility. Unlike Duke or FPL, when we pay our bills, we're investing into the maintenance and improvement of Orlando itself. This proposal is not helping Orlando, Mayor. Orlando needs much more residential solar, and we need many more home efficiency improvements. But this proposal is putting a big blockade in front of we, the citizens, who would very much prefer to help with these goals. I've had solar on my house now for 9 years. Every time I produce more power than I'm using, I'm powering the grid for my neighbors. They're getting clean, green electricity right from my system, right next door, right across the street, with no losses from long transmission lines, no pollution from the Stanton stranded asset. Residential solar has been proven time and again in dozens of independent scientific studies, right on the SEI website that we got referred to earlier, that show that it's beneficial to the community. Those studies show that the current net metering rates are actually underpaying residential solar owners for the electricity they're supplying. If anything, OUC should be increasing the net metering rates and enabling more people to go solar on their homes. And regarding electric vehicles, I've owned an EV since the mid-1990s, almost 30 years. My experience tells me that if anyone charges their EV at home under this new plan, they're going to get bumped into the top tier every month. Are you intentionally trying to keep people burning gasoline? Instead, you should be working to enable EVs to be used for emergency home power during storms and creating an EV virtual power plant to make the whole grid more reliable. OUC's lack of creative thinking in enabling a 21st century grid is at best disappointing. I urge you to reject this proposal. It's bad for individuals, it's bad for Orlando, and it sets a terrible precedent for the rest of the state's profit-driven monopoly utilities. OUC has a good reputation for responsibility compared to the other guys so far. But if OUC goes forward with this destructive plan, those other profiteering utilities will take this as a green light to kill solar and efficiency programs all across Florida. Do not let this happen.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for listening to us. My name is Dr. Kelly Sumrad. I reside at 3111 Amalfi Drive, Orlando, Florida, 32820. This is a classic example of overdevelopment. Essentially, what you're doing is a cost redistribution to working class families because development didn't cover itself. Development didn't pay its bills. Your grid is overtaxed because you got too much development on it. Now you're punishing the very people who tried to be responsible and to move away from the classic traditional model and move on to solar. I'm the vice chair of Save Orange County, and one of the things that we advocate for is sustainable growth and sustainable use of energy. So you got a grid that can't keep up with the demand. So you're going to tax 25% of the hours in the day for working class family. 2 o'clock in the afternoon when kids get home from school, when parents come home from work, what are you expecting them to do? You want the parents to say to the kid, don't turn on your computer, don't use that laptop, don't turn on the AC, sorry you have asthma, sorry it's difficult to breathe. Seriously, you had people who were detoured from coming to this meeting because they couldn't pay the $5 in the parking garage. I walked with them. And they were disturbed by it because they couldn't find free parking to come and participate in a meeting to say that your bill and your idea sucks for the working class people. It's bad. This is a development issue. It's overdevelopment on the grid. So while you consider doing things like annexing Sunbridge and adding to the grid and the demand, think about the working class people that are picking up the tab and subsidizing development that did not pay for itself. This is shameful. What are you waiting for? An ad in a newspaper of a dog who died of heat exhaustion because when the people left, they they turned off their AC bill and their pets are sitting at home, or because their grandparents are sitting at home and they're struggling to find a way to pay their bills? Come on, we're better than this. You're better than this. This is not acceptable. Please do not push this through. Do not vote in support of picking up and subsidizing the cost of overdevelopment and irresponsible growth that had no measure on it. Push back. I have an appreciation for statistics because I'm a professor at one of the country's best institutions. And I got to tell you, those stats, they're crafted very carefully. Show the true picture. How much does your grid cost? Present the public with the data, because I can guarantee that there's a lot of us in this room that can assess it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, President Mills, Commissioners, Mayor, and Mr. Bullock. My name is Mary DuBois, and I am not an OUC customer. I live in Winter Park, 938 Gulfside Thrive. But I'm here today on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Orange County, its board of directors, and our 800 members. The League is a nonpartisan organization dedicated to protecting voters' rights and empowering citizens. And protecting the environment has been a top issue for the League for a long time. Today, the League is going on record to support retaining the existing net metering policy of OUC's residential solar customers. On August 17th, 2017, when the City of Orlando Commissioners adopted the goal of 100% renewable energy, the League was there and we spoke in support and noted that customer-owned solar would be a key component to achieving that ambitious goal. And that goal was a bold move and made the City of Orlando a climate leader in the Southeast. We believe that residential solar is still a critical component to reaching the city's 100% renewable energy goal. But if net metering is phased out, we know that people will halt installing rooftop systems on their homes, their businesses, their houses of faith. And the city's renewable energy goal will be that much more difficult to obtain. The League contends that customer-owned solar provides important benefits, actually for all ratepayers, in the form of better grid reliability and cost savings. For instance, customer-owned solar provides reliability on a hyperlocal basis when excess electricity on one property is sent on the grid to go to nearby neighbors. And customer-owned solar helps to avoid costs by reducing the need for constructing, operating, and maintaining big, expensive, centralized generating stations and long transmission lines. Plus, customer-owned solar reduces the need for expensive fuel during peak consumption hours. The League urges OUC commissioners and staff to really take a close look at the dozens, which Charlie mentioned, the dozens of cost-benefit studies that are out there that say that residential solar actually provides greater benefit than what it's currently being compensated for and what is being spent on net metering. So in summary, the League urges OUC commissioners to continue encouraging the adoption of solar by customers by retaining its current net metering policy for solar customers. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bill Gallagher. I am not an OUC customer. Apologize for that. I am a business owner celebrating our 49th year in the solar industry, May 30th. I want to say that so that my youthful appearance doesn't throw you off in my testimony. Okay. So first of all, OUC is not GRU, it is not JEA. OUC, thanks to Mayor Dyer and Chris Castro, is a shining light on a hill. So do not let the mistakes of others influence what you're doing now. It was a bit awkward hearing the definition of net metering, so I'm going to try to see if I can work it through. Net metering is the fairest, or should I say, most equitable way to compensate homeowners and business owners for investing their capital to harden the grid, protect their families. That's it. When I generate energy from my system, I over-generate it and I send it back to the grid. You're taking that energy and you're selling to my neighbor at retail. Is that fair to me to punish me? It's a form of punishment. And if you want to see what happens when you cut net metering, look at California. Destroyed the industry, thousands of people laid off. It's back in litigation right now because somebody thought it was a good idea to cut net metering. So my thought is, and again, I'm not a very smart guy, so bear with me with this. My thought is, based on what I've heard, by 2030, it's going to cost another $3 a month to support net metering. What if we look at it a different way? What if we look at what does it cost to, what can we save on the transmission lines, right, to go to distributed solar? That would be important. What about once we recover the capital cost of our utility solar, how much is our cost going to get on the consumer? There's a lot of different ways to recover that cost, but don't punish people that are trying to do the right thing. You've done the right thing so far, and I have every trust that you'll continue. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry.
Brian Miller, 530 Rose Street, Umatilla, Florida. I'm a electrical solar contractor. We have hundreds of customers in the OUC area, so I felt I had to come out and say something for them. I've been on the phone with them. There's a lot of slides gone through where there's confusion, there's opportunities. The way I see it right now, there's no way anyone could process everything they had up there to see if it was facts or not. The way I see it, I just want to focus on a part of it, on the solar for the residential and commercial part of it. I'm not going to get into the rate increase stuff, but to go over that, you know, I could contradict every slide they had up there. You have someone telling you facts that they think's facts. I mean, should be a third party coming in here telling you facts, okay? There's just a lot going on. She talks about peak demand reduction. Well, she doesn't tell you how the solar helps reduce it. There's a lot of things been said up here about, I put solar on my house, it feeds the house next door. Those wires are there. There's no upgrades. They charged full price. They didn't pay anything to produce that. No fuel, no power plants, no nothing. Why would you stop that? Makes no sense. They talk about EV chargers. Well, if you did some studies on EVs, that's the future of power plants. You're going to backfeed into the grid and you're going to make money by backfeeding. You don't have to build power plants. Let's see. Non-customers, OUC, you know, you're talking about building solar, CO2, right? But you're killing the solar. Why are you going negative? Why are you pushing residents from spending all this money? You talk about energy efficiencies, right? Okay, let's go change light bulbs to LEDs, but someone really makes a significant investment and you're going to kill them for it because you're not making the money from them. That's the fact. You know, the way I see it is just common sense. You guys are putting some false slides up there. I hope you guys do a little bit more research on this and look at that, but I just see it as a money grab. It's a greedy money grab from the utility, and I hope you guys look at this and do more in-depth studies on it because it's a bad move. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor Commissioners. My name is Tim Volcavo. Thank you for hearing me today. I know there's a lot of sentiment of anger in the room. I think you understand why, but I wouldn't mistake it as anger. I would say it's very passionate because this is important to us in the business and homeowners. I don't think OUC can say that they want to be reliable and sustainable and affordable and at the same time de-incentivize someone from having rooftop solar. Earlier, someone asked about what was the break-even point on investment in a solar system. And years ago, I said it could be as much as 20 years. And now it's down to maybe 7 to 10 years. That is with the current model of net metering. What do you think is going to happen to that break even with the suggested degradation in the buyback rate, current customers included? I don't think anyone here would disagree that we don't recognize the need to improve the system, to improve the grid, but our improvement should in no way discourage rooftop solar. You want to have partnerships like the United Way. How about the Department of Energy? How about speak with Chris Castro, who grew up here? His name was brought up earlier. What about the Florida Solar Energy Industries Association or Solar United Neighbors? Work together. You've heard from some of them here. Look at Energy Vault, if you know what that is. Find ways to store the energy. Time of use pricing, I think that's understandable to reduce the high demand times, but don't penalize us for time of use pricing. Electric vehicles, if you put in this net metering, the electric vehicle owner is going to say, I want to charge in the middle of the day. Why? Because I don't want to send any of my energy that I have to OUC because they're going to give me back less for it. So the goal is going to be to keep the energy at the home site. Battery works, but not everyone can afford a battery. Not everyone can afford an EV. So if you want to petition the state to let us go off of the grid and not use the grid, right? So we can have our own storage and then you don't have to worry about us as a customer, but we don't have that option right now. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is the solar farms. Solar farms are becoming more utility scale solar, as we saw was one of the cheapest ways to provide solar. Keep in mind a few things. These solar farms are not desert wastelands. You are now shading an area that was never shaded before. There are ecosystems there. There are animals there. There are fish in that water that are now going to be in the shade. Now, I think there's a place for solar farms. I think it's necessary for the future of the independence of power in our country, but I just think it needs to be done responsibly. For people that rent, that can't put in solar, great, let them buy into your solar program. But there's nothing better than putting it on a rooftop house that already has created its carbon footprint. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Casey Harbison. I actually live in Tavares, but I'm an active member in Orlando and I'm here every week. I would like to start with all of America's utilities are watching you right now. You are leading the green initiative. For as much work as I did through my collegiate career with Chris Castro and working on the Orange County Sustainability 2030 plan, I would also note that I am a solar residential owner myself, which is also why I'm here. I'm not going to be speaking on sustainability today. I'm going to be speaking on the working class. The disappointment that comes with this aggressive pitch from OUC is unmatched. For FPL to try this in 2021 was one thing because we all know what they stand for. OUC is a forward-thinking municipality. This really breaks trust with citizens with you. The working class cannot dictate when they can use their power. Our homes are locked and closed during the day, obviously. Peak production from our PV systems. During this time, my neighbors are using my clean energy produced by my system at a cost to them we charge, but not at a cost to the utility. Without net metering, it's well known that residential solar will be crushed within, It's very apparent with all utilities that you might want to hold the solar reins. Citizens do see this as an aggressive pitch and an attack on residential rooftop solar. As a young working class individual who can't use any of their production energy in real time during the day, net metering only makes sense. And is the only reason I would join the clean energy congregation. We say energy is transitioning with greater needs, and it sounds like there's just a lack of infrastructure. It's a known fact that rooftop solar strengthens the grid, and solar produces shared clean energy throughout the community. 9 kilowatts in OUC utilities and other utilities did not have to pay to produce this. You didn't have to use fuels to produce this either. Your pitch will eliminate rooftop solar for homeowners. We all know there is no point to having solar when you can't use it in real time and there is no net metering. I'm not selling anything. No money is exchanged or hits my account. Net metering is simply this. My neighbors use my production that you charge them for, and that my home produced for you. At a minimum, net metering is a credit to an account for what should be owed to residential solar owners. And there in my account sits my credits that I use when I can use them. This is after work and of course during peak hours. At your peak hours. You're putting us in a corner that we can't move out of. There's no choice for us, and I cannot change a job because the utility is shamelessly selfish. This is against what America stands for, the right for free enterprise. This is not about sustainability today, and we know this. Don't distract us.
Close, ma'am. Your time is up. Bring it to a close, please.
Alrighty. For the working class citizens, net metering only makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. My name is Thad Cully, and I am with the company Sunrun, the nation's largest provider of residential solar and storage. I have neither the good fortune or good sense to be from Orlando, but I am from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and love my day down here today and look forward to many happy returns. But we have a significant, and we're proud to have made a significant investment in our facilities here in Orlando and provide, many family-sustaining jobs. But today I really want to talk about this from a regulatory perspective. So my background, I've done a lot of rate cases and net metering cases around the country in my previous life as an energy lawyer. And I came here I had a lot of questions, and I appreciate the listening sessions and being able to ask questions directly. Unfortunately, there weren't a lot of direct answers to some of those questions on that call, but a lot of that was clarified today. Unfortunately, I'm a little disappointed by what I found about the rate design. I personally am a proponent of time of use rates. I do think that they are going to be the way of the future to help us mitigate the impacts of electrification on the grid. Unmanaged electrification could really pose an affordability challenge as customers adopt EVs and heat pumps. And if they are not controlling that peak usage and have meaningful rate signals to tell them when to consume, when it's going to be more efficient, then we could really find ourselves with a problem. This rate design is nothing like the pilot, which did have a meaningful differential between the on-peak and off-peak. And as the slide showed, a 10% reduction in peak is pretty significant. Now, I would posit none of the customers, at least from my understanding with conversations, were actually solar customers in that pilot. I'd like to see what that peak reduction might be when you add solar on top of it. In my experience as an attorney working on a case in Oklahoma, and this is to answer one of the questions that came up earlier, a cost of service analysis that a utility did. They looked at solar customers as a separate class, and they found that those customers were cheaper to serve than everyone else and actually produced a higher rate of return. They were on a time of use rate, and this is a summer peaking utility. Closer to home, and actually my home, North Carolina and South Carolina, Duke Energy produced a cost of service analysis looking at solar as a theoretical separate class, not actually as a separate class, and found that the cost to serve them on the production and transmission component was significantly less than the rest of the customers. And looking at the slides that were shown today, you can see solar, maybe it's not at its full tilt when the system hits its peak, but it's still there. And if you raptured all the solar, took it away, what would happen to that reserve margin? There are a lot of questions to ask. And if we lose the pace of adoption of solar and we see the load growth that's coming and the impacts of electrification, that's not going to be a cheaper future. So I'd ask you to reconsider. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, President, Commissioners. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Janet Bowman, and I'm with the Nature Conservancy. I'm not an OUC customer. I live in Tallahassee, but we do work throughout the state, including Orlando, and we have a chapter office in this area. We're here to object to the changes in true net solar to net metering, and the reason that we're concerned about it is we've been working with partners all over the state to bring down the federal incentives for solar installation of rooftop solar and also in energy efficiency. We are a founding member of the Florida Solar for All Coalition with partners Sun and Self. And we're receiving, the good news, $156 million to implement rooftop solar for low-income communities in Florida, low-income residents, both residential and multifamily. But one of the requirements of the program, and certainly something that we all support, is that it's intended to result in significant energy bill reduction for low-income individuals. And we're concerned that the changes to this program will really disincentivize the benefits that rooftop solar could bring to low-income communities. In addition, for folks that are not in that category, certainly the tax incentives that are available now for installation of both solar and batteries, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And, these programs are on basically a 5-year path that kind of coincides with your ratcheting down of net metering. So just at a time when we should be incentivizing the adoptions and doing what we can to get this money out the door and benefiting customers, this particular policy, we believe, will disincentivize those programs. I wanted to say, like you all, I really appreciate your greenhouse gas emission goals, and that's a high priority of the Nature Conservancy. And our work in this realm is to that end. And I'd like to point out to you all that recently the region submitted to EPA a carbon pollution reduction plan, their initial plan, that includes as one of the priority strategies the increase in rooftop solar in the region as one of the strategies that have the biggest greenhouse gas emission reduction benefit. So we implore you to sort of rethink the structure and to not disincentivize this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for folks to take advantage of funding for these improvements. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And I hope this is, first of all, I want to thank you so much for this opportunity. I think it's refreshing to see that OUC, and I want to say something slightly different. My name is Juan Pesante. I'm a veteran. I'm a small business owner, and an OUC client. What I wanted to say, first of all, OUC have done great things for me and my family. What I mean with this, giving me a chance to have a great incentive, increase the energy efficiency by providing credits for me, putting in air conditioning, windows. That's been great. Appreciate that. Regarding net metering, what I would like to say, unfortunately, yes, I stand on the other side. I've been hearing the whole conversation here about equity. You know what? I just want equality. I just want that when I sell my electricity back to you guys, pay me fairly. That's all I want. I'm not trying to here to, I understand you got to make money. I understand that all these gentlemen in here have a job to do. I understand that. And I appreciate what you guys do as a resident, as a business owner, as everything. I appreciate that because I work from home. But, but one question that I want to ask you guys and ladies is you're talking about peak shift, which is basically when people go home and we affecting the people going home. Well, the peak when the businesses are there, right? From 9 to 5. Are we talking about that peak shift too? That's also part of this deal. You're grabbing a poor family, and we're talking about people suffering, and politicians and everybody. Oh, how much we're suffering about things are expensive and inflation. We also got inflation. All you see is suffering inflation. I understand that, guys. It's business. I understand that's life. But all I want is equality. Don't give me this equity thing. Don't level the field. Don't try to do this. Give me something that as a veteran who defended this country, give me the same opportunities you're giving this gentleman and you're giving this company for me to be successful. That's what I'm asking. And with that, I give you 57 seconds back. Have a great day.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Matthew Gropolsky. I serve the county as an associate soil and water supervisor, the campaign strategy lead for the Sunrise Movement Orlando, and a fighter for equity, affordability, and sustainability. Orange County in the state of Florida is facing crisis after crisis in regards to our affordability and climate. Florida is unaffordable. Florida is in a state of upheaval. Florida isn't working for all. South Florida is flooding like hell this week. If you take a few steps outside in this raging heat, you're going to feel like you're going to die. And on top of all that, a few select people have uplifted their friends while the majority of Orange County gets screwed over. You can say for the millionth time, oh, coal and fossil fuels are cost efficient. Let's use it. Skip out on solar. Well, cost efficiency doesn't matter when the damn state is underwater. Higher rates during peak demand, you'd be punishing the working class for working typical work hours. Surge pricing, see what happened to Wendy's. People don't like that. Y'all, we have a county and city government that punishes people for being unhoused, for sleeping on streets, and you want to charge higher rates for everyday people. You're going to reduce cost savings, which is why so many people in the Sunshine State wants to harness the sunshine for their power. This is all corporate greed. Before I fully moved into Orange County, I was unhoused. I surfed couches, I slept in my car, and I worked hard. I just got a new apartment this past week. I couldn't do that if prices kept going up. We're at a crossroads. Do the right thing, fight for solar, fight for actual affordability, fight for the working class, and fight for people. Thank you.
I'm Eugene Staccato, 331 Roswell, and I am an OUC member. I joined the Orlando Co-op in Winter Park back in 2015. I was one of the first people to install, trying to prepare myself for retirement, which now I'm in retirement to stabilize my price. And my question is, how did we get there this grid charge? I'd like to see a spreadsheet presented by the board in detail how you break that out. We talked about $1 for a scale costs. It costs millions of dollars to install the solar, but there's also a huge power line going back to us, which is costing millions of dollars additional. Is that part of the cost? Because I know FPL is leasing back some of their facilities to y'all because of the tax credit, but all along I-10, there's all this power lines there. So there's a cost there that we don't have to have, because what we're trying to do is we have a distributed system that we represent as homeowners. And that is over a huge area. Yes, there are clouds, but potentially not going to cover as big as, if your utility gets covered, you just lost 74 megawatts. If you get covered, then you're not losing it because it's distributed over hundreds of square miles, potentially. So we designed back in the 80s a distributed system called the internet for redundancy reasons. It was based for nuclear war, essentially. It was designed not to go down. When I sell in the afternoon back to you all, I'm selling at base rate costs. There's an open market, it's commodity. Electricity is like pork bellies. You're buying it on the open market, and at peak times, you buy at peak times, peak costs. What we're doing is actually reducing that cost for you, because you're buying my electricity at what you're paying me. It's going to my neighbors. It's not going to me. So I'm using underutilized capacity within the existing network today that you have. I'm not asking you to build new power lines. I'm going to distribute my power strictly to my neighbors, because that's the way the distributed system works. The system's already there to do it. OUC, what is trying to do is trying to go maintain a monopoly, which FPL and Duke is trying to do. This model goes back to Edison, 1890s, when he built the Niagara Falls, and him, there's a little debate about AC versus DC. I won't go into that. But what we're trying to do, what we represent is the future. We are distributing this model. There's plenty of capacity between all of us to try to get to the next step, which is trying to keep this planet going forward. And I really believe that we all can work together and we all can be successful. You, as a company, you can be successful, but we have to be successful and make it cost effective for us. So that's my ask. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. My name is Bill Johnson. I'm a solar contractor based at 1718 Independence Boulevard, Sarasota, Florida, 34234. And I come to you today as the treasurer of FLASIA, the Florida Solar Energy Industry Association. We represent approximately 3,000 employees of solar contractors in the greater Orlando area who will be directly impacted by this elimination of the net metering program. And let us be very clear, as opposed to the marketing literature that you hear about true net, this is actually an elimination of net metering. Okay, let's be very clear about that. This will have a major impact on the industry in the state, in the area that OUC serves. And I can tell you that because we've seen the same type of thing happen in the other municipal territories where these kinds of rate structures have been implemented. So Jacksonville Electric, Lakeland Electric, Peace River Electric. If you actually look at the interconnection rates in terms of kilowatts and megawatts that have been interconnected since they implemented these new programs, you will see that the interconnection rate has dropped through the floor, okay? The net metering program that you have today has allowed you to adopt over 100 megawatts of solar, 600 acres of land saved, $150 to $200 million in direct investment that OUC has been able to avoid, because that's the amount it would cost you to install that much solar yourself. So please take a look at the data from the other municipals before you proceed with any kind of rate structure change like this. I mean, I can tell you, we used to install a lot of solar in Peace River territory. We don't install there anymore. And that's why, because they've changed their rate structure to what you guys are talking about. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Dan Helm. I am a resident of 2026 East Jefferson, and I am an OUC customer. I'm also a candidate for supervisor elections, and I wasn't originally going to speak today. I was just here to listen. But one of my initiatives is to bring solar to the supervisor elections office for election security, for energy independence, so that I can conduct elections in case the power goes out during hurricane season. And so what I'm hearing today discourages me, right? It discourages me as somebody that's going to be running a 50,000 square foot business, that it's not going to make as much economic sense to do this change. And I think the perception here that I'm taking away is OUC sees the value of solar and is expanding its own solar arrays, but you're disincentivizing other people to have solar because it's increasing the cost. And you cite an equity difference, that's why you're doing it. You're increasing the inequity by increasing the cost because people that want to do solar are now going to be disincentivized to be able to do it. So it's a problematic of perception. I'll be very brief because I know Representative Escamani is behind me and she'll say everything I have to say just better. So as a supervisor elections, I'm concerned about me and other government agencies looking at solar, implementing to make sure that we're doing everything we can as a community to reach that net zero. And this discourages me, right? I think that it needs to be rethought, re-workshop to come up with a better solution. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, commissioners. Thanks so much for having us today. My name is Ana Escamani, 126 North Mills Avenue in Orlando, Florida. And of course, a proud Orlandonian and OUC customer. And I want to say hello to the mayor as well and to all the commissioners. And thank you, Dan, for setting that up. So it should come as no surprise that I have concerns about net metering changes being proposed from OUC, especially since in the legislature, we actually had legislation that FPL had crafted in an attempt to do something statewide with their customers. And not only did I vote no on the legislation, but of course it got a veto as well due to the impact. And I do think the veto that the governor granted was also based upon some of the concerns with jobs that you heard already today. And in the greater Orlando area, there's at least 3,000 direct jobs that could be impacted. And then there's externalities. There's jobs that benefit from those jobs that could also be impacted. Now, I'm also a very practical person, so I understand that, I think most industry folks would agree that long-term, things do need to evolve. And I appreciate a 7-year glide path for current customers, but I also recommend not only considering elongating that, but new customers should also be grandfathered in that process. Because if you do it with the current proposal, anyone who is thinking about rooftop solar will look at that look back, right? To how many years will it take me to pay off? And it's just going to say it's not worth it. It's not possible. And they're not going to pursue rooftop solar. So I would really encourage a consideration. I understand the rebate idea might be a way to counter the grandfathering concept, but I really do think if you grandfather new homeowners in, so if you come in at year 2, you're in at year 2. If you come in year 5, you're in at year 5 versus giving them another 7 years, which would be my preference is longer. But if we're dealing with the current structure we have, I would encourage you to get creative about it and not create this dramatic dip in new rooftop solar, because that is what's going to happen with the current proposal. The other changes regarding time of day and peak periods, candidly, I know a lot of parts of the country are doing this as well, was mentioned in the data. Not every municipality is it mandated. Some have opt-ins. So a customer can opt in to try it out versus making it required. Because I share the concerns about families who might have 1 meter in their apartment complex. We still have properties in Orlando where there's just 1 meter for a whole complex. They don't have the capacity, the infrastructure even, right, to limit their energy usage. And of course, energy efficiency is not the reality for every family. So I think boosting and strengthening energy efficiency programs should be prioritized first before even initiating a time of day change, because it's going to be advantageous to some families, but not for every family. So with that, I appreciate y'all. And I do want to give a quick shout out to staff who met with me proactively, really appreciate the open dialogue. And so I can only expect more conversations to come. Thank you.
So I'm Val Mobley, 226 West King Street, Orlando, 32804. A proud customer of OUC for almost 40 years. Happy to be with OUC compared to some of the for-profit utilities that anyway. So here's the thing. We decided to put solar on our rooftop because we knew it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing for the planet. It was the right thing for us. Our bill in our tiny little cottage in College Park was never that great. It was not a burden to us to pay it. And my husband tried to object for years and say, we don't need it. Our bill is so small. Well, no, we do need it because it's the right thing to do. It's right for the planet. So we don't use a whole lot of energy. It's just 2 of us in a very small house. So we are creating with those rooftop panels excess energy. And where does it go? It goes back through the grid to help other people. That's part of why we did it. We wanted to help save the planet, help our neighbors who have trees or whatever reason they can't put solar on their rooftops. So let me quote from one of the presenters. We need as much solar as we can get. Yes, we do. But if you do this plan that you've just laid out, you are not going to get more solar because people are going to say, I can't afford this. I can't wait the rest of my life to pay this off and reap the benefits. Everybody has said you're disincentivizing rooftop solar, and we need more rooftop solar. Think about if everybody in Orlando had rooftop solar, how much that would come back to OUC to provide for those people who don't have it. Also, it was said there's a cost to using the grid. Well, I'm sorry, I don't understand that. I'm not using the grid, I'm giving it back to the grid. That's part of why we wanted to do this. I'm curious, and I know I'm not going to get an answer to this, but I'm curious how many people who are on this panel or work for OUC have rooftop solar. That's who you need to talk to. Thank you.
Good.
Hi. Hi, Commissioners, Mayor, President. It's good to see you again. I think it's been a while, but my name is Susanna Randolph. I am the chapter director for Sierra Club Florida, new role. But I am an OUC customer. I live at 701 Delaney Park Drive in Orlando. I'm here to speak really to the economic and equity reasons as to why this proposal needs to be revisited and improved before it would be moved forward at all. But first, I urge you all to consider the fact that we are at a time when there are unprecedented investments being made in clean energy technologies, access, and infrastructure, and as a result, creating massive job opportunities and economic growth. This proposal will endanger those benefits to our community that are being afforded to us by President Biden and the IRA and the IIJA. 3 important points. First, on equity. In November 2021, a paper published by the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory pointed out that if inequities baked into an existing system are not reversed, they are likely to become more pronounced, which is why this has to be done right. For a just transition, lower income customers need basic electric power service at a limited cost and equal access to distributed energy resources with protections against upfront capital or credit requirements. One part of that just transition is ratepayer funded programs with income-based discounts that include consumer protections against unreasonable charges and fees that can help those customers recover from arrearages. There's precedent among other utility companies in this country who have tied the tiered rates to income levels, thus making the approach much more equitable. So when we talk about equity, I would urge you to look at those systems. On net metering, the net metering section provided by OUC says a graduated reduction in value for excess energy sold. But as many have pointed out, however, that what you all shared will immediately change the rate for new customers. That glide path is not for new customers. There should also be really no change to net metering between now and 2032 when the IRA incentives sunset. Then you should publish your timeline for how they will reduce net metering rate for everyone over time if needed, but in particular to really advance and make sure that we are leveraging the IRA benefits. You know, President Biden has put his absolute everything into this, as well as a lot of people who work at the federal government. We want to make sure that we are not disincentivizing and not leveraging those resources, especially with the Solar for All program. With regard to demand, we really urge you to base any demand assessment that you use to inform this proposal on local statistics. For instance, in a presentation we reviewed, there was a claim of a demand going up due to data centers, high-tech manufacturing, and EVs. But we'd like to see where you can point to where there are new data centers and manufacturing that is driving that need for the new pricing structure. On EVs, we really know that EVs are rising in Orlando, but have you done an analysis on how much that specific demand has gone up over the last decade? What are your projections? Can you share those projections? And how are you calculating them? I will wrap up really quickly, but as the mother of a middle schooler, I am constantly reminded, as is my daughter, of the importance of showing your work when it comes to math. We're just asking to see that work so we can understand your math. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Guy. I'm from Avalon Park, been there since 2001. OUC customer, same amount of time. I built my house back in 2001 knowing someday it was going to get solar. So the house is north-south facing. It's got the perfect pitch, but I didn't do it because it wasn't cost effective. It didn't make any sense. Solar guys kept coming to my house all the time, always knocking on the door. They're doing it now. I still get these phone calls. What made the difference was Rick Scott signed that legislation that made this one-for-one thing. And I remember when this guy came around the house telling me, well, no, this has changed. I had to look at the numbers again because I'm a numbers guy. And once I did that, I realized now this makes sense. I didn't have a big electric bill, but what I did have was a lot of efficiency built into my house preparing for this day. When I finally did it, this is like a eureka moment. The cost to do the system, it was like a one for one basically for me. So it wasn't going to cost me more and I wasn't going to lose anything, but what it was going to do was protect me from the future and the cost of my energy usage in this house. I have a big house, so this is always a big concern of mine. So when I hear all this change about the net metering, there was a big push to actually stop that. Well, that'll kill the solar industry for sure. So what I think OUC is looking at, we are a gigantic solar farm. All these homes, we're producing electricity for your grid, and you see this as a one-for-one. Well, you're licking your chops. You don't have any money in my house. And if you could just pay me a fraction of what I'm paying or what you were paying me, then that's a windfall without you doing anything. That's what this is. It looks like a gigantic money grab to the people that I'm talking to. Now, I don't know what the answer is. You talk about batteries. Well, they're not efficient. They're expensive. That's another at least $10,000. And, when I'm near retirement age, this doesn't make any sense. They're talking about this, do a battery. Well, I overproduce during the day and I use my energy in the evening in the form of credits, and all my electric bill is my connection charge. So I paid for that. I baked it in. I figured it out. I did my homework. Well, this changes everything. This is going to make my bill go up significantly more. And I was planning for my future and my retirement. And I think with a lot of other people here, and I just don't think it's fair that those of us that did this when the systems cost significantly more than they do now, that we're going to just have to eat that. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lee Perry. I reside in 32810, and I am a local climate activist. I wanted to first comment on some of the fossil fuel tactics that I heard during the early part of the presentation. I've been coming to a lot of these public hearings during the coal ash and RFP fights, hearing these surveys that you administer to the public, asking them to rate sustainability up against, a reliable energy grid, as if we had to choose between energy that was reliable or sustainable. We don't have to make people make that choice. It's something that can be one and the same. If we diversified our energy grid with renewable energy, there is a reliable mechanism to do so, number one. Number two, there's 64 lights on in this room right now. There's over 30 people that escorted me from the elevator, giving me a name tag, passing out water bottles, bringing me into this room. And I know many of you make over $400,000 a year. There's ways we can scrape money together to help and really actually be equitable, okay? I know for a fact that you guys sponsor dinners and galas. I see your logo all over sporting events. And I don't understand why the poor people that are probably, many of which are at home right now, probably trying to feed their kids after school, have to foot the bill on this new proposal when they're trying to do their best just to survive right now. And we're not talking about the true costs that go into the energy grid, because I didn't see any actual data on what the grid is really experiencing right now in terms of cost to justify this. I saw a lot of, statistics about usage and consumption, but I didn't see anything about the actual expenses of the grid or even just keeping all these 64 lights on in here. The other thing is the cost of coal. Somebody made a joke about how, coal is cheap. We're not charging the asthma rates, the incredible damage from climate change. We're not looking at the entire picture of what using coal would be in comparison to what we're saving in terms of lives and air quality when we transition. So those are also costs that need to be considered when we're doing proposals, talking about equity 100 times, but not actually putting the numbers together and doing that. The other thing is you guys are saying that you have net zero goals. Well, disincentivizing solar, especially for commercial businesses, which already have a hard time funding that cost of transitioning to solar, most of these buildings that have all this glass are really causing high energy burdens on our grid. Now they'll never transition to solar if they're going to make less in the long run. Like, we need to consider every part of the picture, and definitely the working class people.
Thank you. All right, I believe that's it. Is there? Paula? Is that it? Okay, we'll take this last gentleman and then we'll move on.
Hi, my name is Justin Winkler. I live at 20 North Linden Drive, right behind Colonial High School there, a little higher with us. I'm a normal guy. I'm not an activist. I don't have a business. I don't have an organization, but I put solar on my house. It's
spent like 30 grand on it, and this sucks. This isn't the right way to do this. I'm gonna get so much crap from my friends about putting solar on my house. I had 2 people in my neighborhood do it too, because I said I did it. And it seems like such a big step back. It really doesn't make sense to me. So that's all I got. Thanks.
I want to thank you all so much for your comments. And Mr. Bullock, Clint, do you have any comments at this time?
Yes, I'll attempt to make a few closing comments. I do want to just start with, again, I appreciate the community coming out and speaking from the heart. And certainly there were a lot of passionate comments that were shared here today. I think it's important to preserve, again, this municipal utility, and having community feedback is certainly fundamental. And so I want to start by acknowledging that and let you know that you were certainly heard. I'll attempt to say a few different things here. And so certainly, you know, we're very open to continuing the dialogue related to more details, more spreadsheets, and we'll be happy to go on for another few more hours if folks would like to do that, whether it's today or another day. But I think there are a couple of fundamental things that are still an important element of this conversation. And one is solar is an intermittent resource. That there's just no denying the fact that it's an intermittent resource. And I hope that the folks in the audience recognize that we have an obligation to serve our customers electricity as they need it, as they require it. And reliability is obviously a fundamental element to that. And so that is a challenge we all have as the industry. That's not an OUC challenge. We all face that challenge in the industry. And I'll say, you know, in Florida, perhaps it is a little more of a challenge because at the moment, that is the only economically viable renewable energy we have is solar. And we have to figure out a way to expand it and utilize it. But at the same time, we have an obligation when everyone turns those lights on, they're expecting the power to come on, regardless if the sun's out during the day or if it's storming or in the night. So when we get back to this peak conversation, there are times the solar is not generating and the customers expect us to serve. They expect us to balance the system, to balance the resources as said, and it's a fair statement. We have large scale solar and it can go down just like your rooftop, right? If the sun is not shining, and so you're expecting power at your house, and so are all of our customers that don't have solar and we have to serve. And so that is a continuous challenge that we have to respond in real time. And so when we talk about the peak and the contribution to the peak or not contributing to the peak, that's really difficult because the loads instantaneously for the customers don't drop. Whether we're in buildings or we're at amusement parks or at our business, a hospital, wherever we are, when the sun comes through and we lose the solar panels, the customer's usage doesn't drop. It just doesn't work that fast. And so we are the backup. And I think everyone wants us to be the backup and expects us to continue to serve reliably. And I think when we look at that element and we look at the cost recovery, unless I'm hearing customers say they never use OUC at all, that distribution system is needed on times when you don't produce, whether again, it's evening or whether it's when the clouds come through. And so we are very conscious of low to middle income customers. We're conscious for all of our customers, but spend an hour with us sitting on the phone with our collections department and hearing about people not being able to pay their bills. It's hard. And I respect your position of the investment you made, and I hear the tone that it's hard with this change. I do hear that. But affordability is an important element for OUC, and I strongly feel that there are many of these recommendations that will help those folks. We've got to figure out a way to do a better job at cost causation. I own EV, I have solar thermal, but I think I should have to pay my way for EV if I want to charge multiple cars during the peak time. I don't think that you non-EV customers should pay for that. And so I think it's that similar kind of conversation. How are we addressing cost causation when that infrastructure is needed? And I think that's the crux of it. We certainly are going to continue to do more large-scale solar because, quite honestly, it's a third of the cost. I mean, if we're going to get to this goal of 2050, but more importantly, the near-term goal of 2030, while we, again, it's a balance, right? Those things are all a balance. It's not one over the other. A third of the cost is a third of the cost. I think you all would agree that is an important step to take. So again, there's a lot more conversations. We're struggling with this $9 million, right, of under recovery subsidy, however we want to classify it. It's real because the transformer is there at your house. That transformer you do use at full capacity sometimes. And if we can't recover those dollars appropriately for that transformer sitting there, we're recovering it from other customers. And we're struggling with that. We're struggling with the fairness associated with that. It's real. Val, I was going to ask you where your husband is, but I think I know where he is because I see the shirt. And so I think that's great. We're open to continuing to share conversation. I know today was a big step in more of the specifics. I grant all the comments. I read every single one of them. You know, it starts with an introduction of a concept. I think OUC felt like if we jump right to the rate conversation, we might miss a lot in that conversation. So your comments are fair. I hope today was the beginning of seeing OUC open up. And we're willing to open up more, that are interested in opening up more and having conversation. You heard, you know, Commissioner Gross, if there's other studies, you know, we'll certainly look at it. We're just trying to manage that affordability, reliability, sustainability, and resiliency, and it's a continuous balance. We see the changes going on today. We see the changes going on in the future. Sure, we want more EVs, but we want for all of us to encourage them to charge at the right time. So I'll just say thank you for coming out. We will make notes. We will follow up. We certainly have some work to do. I didn't expect we were going to solve everything here today, but appreciate you taking time out of your personal schedule. We heard you. I hope you heard us a little bit, and we'll continue the conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Clint. Commissioners, any parting comments? Mayor?
I just want to thank staff for a lot of hard work and due diligence in putting this whole plan together. I will tell you though, Clint, that I'm not 100% sold on the net metering changes. I don't know if we were voting today, I'd vote no on that. I don't know if the timing is right. I'm willing to have additional discussions between now and July, but I don't know. We've been a leader in all things green, and just because the other municipalities have done that doesn't mean we necessarily have to do that. So this is really the first time I've focused in on that. I know you've come and visited with me some on this already, but I'm just having a little trouble with that. So I just want to let you know.
I too would like to thank staff. I thought it was a very in-depth presentation. I found, you know, I learned a lot today. You know, trying to chase that peak and building your church for Easter Sunday. You know, we've got to smooth out that peak. I like that OUC is the longest, most supportive solar company of all the munis in Florida. I felt like, you know, some people might have started with thank you, but you know, I don't want to see a disincentive. I was just taking down some notes from a lot of people who were commenting. So as I kind of talk, we can focus in on that. The cost of service study, does it contribute to the reliability? What were some real impacts to other cities who changed the net metering as it goes to solar? I do have high regard for League of Women Voters, Nature Conservancy, Sierra Club. I was curious about grant impacts. If we're gonna, save 50 million to lose 100 million, that's not a good investment. I thought that whoever made the comment about the amount of land we were saving with the rooftop solar was a valid point. A little bit of the EV users don't pay gas taxes, but gas taxes go to pay for infrastructure. So, there's going to be a correction, I think, there, right? So it's a little solar users have some infrastructure responsibility. So I just want to make sure I understand that better. I think, was it Susanna who talked about the tiered system tied to income? I was thinking about it the same way, but I was kind of thinking about the size of the house might take care of that, So that's important to me. I appreciate everybody's comments. I really appreciate staff. I think you've done a great job. I mean, I know the net metering is a tough deal. I feel like everybody else should be pretty supportive of the rest of it, because I don't think it's going to be quite as impactful as some of the stories about, 2 o'clock homework at home, but I could be wrong. So I learned a lot, and I continue to look forward to learning more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to also say thank you to everybody who showed up today and offered input. I learned something every single time I hear from another person. That was really helpful. Just want to say that my priority is always looking at 2030 and the 50% achievement of the carbon reductions. I don't ever lose sight of that sitting up here at every single meeting we talk about that. I'm not looking at 2050, I'm looking at 2030. So for me, that's just the highest priority I've got. I'm really excited about battery storage. I know the problems on the grid. I see it with EVs. I see it with the intermittent renewables, wind. If you want to live in a state that's got really intermittent energy, take a look at what they're going to have to deal with on the wind. But solar is just right behind that in having to deal with storage. So I'm really excited about the storage program. I'm also really excited about time of use. I need to adjust my behaviors as well. And so I think it's a really critical part of this program. I was really hoping I'd hear something more about best cases for how to deal with net metering. We have a problem, we got to solve it. And I've struggled for 10 years, hearing the problem, seeing them increase over time, especially as we watch California growth in rooftop solar. Boy, I point you to some better answers, how we're going to deal with this. I've asked for a couple more studies that you guys have referenced here today. I really want to read through those and understand what does it offer? What are these lower costs to serve solar rooftop customers? I do want to understand that. So please, just keep pushing information at us. I guess maybe I'll just close in saying, of all the utilities I work with, and I work with quite a few utilities in the United States, investor-owned munis and rural co-ops. There is so much heart at OUC. They care and they worry about these decisions. They do try to look at it from bottom up, top down, sideways. So they are open. I can tell you, everybody sitting up here is really open to understanding what you're seeing that we don't see. I really appreciate some of the heartfelt comments today. Val, Bill, Justin at the very end. I get it. I hear it. We're looking for some answers. So appreciate the opportunity to actually serve here and be here to listen to all this and know that I think that a lot of us are still really open to thinking this through. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm not going to be redundant. I echo everybody's sentiment and expressions of thanks to all who are here. And I'm really grateful and thankful to the public for those of you who have endured and stayed with us all the way through to allow us to hear your viewpoints. We've learned a lot. and your comments have not fallen on deaf ears. As I said in the beginning of the meeting, this was not a meeting to reach a decision. This was an information gathering meeting, and I have a ton of notes on information that we've gathered from this. I want to leave you with this. For you to trust us, this meeting is based on education. This meeting, as we said in the beginning, was based on outreach and communications. And this meeting is based on response to data gathered. And our commitment to you is to educate you as well as you to educate us. It's a twofold communication process. And we appreciate the enlightenment we've received from you. We're going to use it, and let me show you how. We're not going to make a decision at the July 9th meeting either. We're going to gather more data. We're going to hear, and you'll probably get a vote from us in August. And so feel free to continue to pump data. Feel free to challenge. Feel free to point. As Britta has said, best practices and other information. Feel free to write to our elected officials and our mayor and allow him to weigh in with us as well. And we want to hear and make sure that in August, when we vote, we do have all the data necessary to reach an equitable conclusion that points us to our future goals. 2050 is not off the radar. 2030, and so sometimes what we have to do in the present dictates the outcome of the future. We're future oriented, and that becomes the key. As we also, as you all have said, we don't want to destroy our future with a decision that looks like it's cost driven today. We want to make sure that we're strategically focused. And I must commend this staff. I've told them time and time again, all the organization I've been in, I've never seen one so focused on the future. And that's what we're focused on today. So I appreciate all of you coming out. I appreciate our comments and our communication and your perseverance. And your coming out is not in vain. I officially now, with no objection, adjourn this meeting at 5:55 p.m. Thank you.